Rick turned an entire Earth into Cronenberg monsters over a high school dance, then abandoned everyone to die in that nightmare. Morty killed dozens of people, including his own grandfather, while following a death crystal just to die old with Jessica. Beth trapped her childhood friend in an alternate dimension for 30 years and murdered him when he finally confronted her. And those are just 3 of the disturbing moments we're breaking down in this video. Can you imagine all the messed up stuff there is to uncover when we dive deep into how evil is every Rick and Morty character over the next few hours? I was certainly shocked by some of the stuff I found when I made this video. So, if you're ready to be blown away by what's about to come, sit back, relax, maybe grab some Szechuan sauce, but not the kind that costs 17 billion snake lives, and let's begin. Rick Sanchez is basically what would happen if Tony Stark and Dr. Manhattan had a baby, and that baby decided emotional availability was for losers. He's the smartest man in infinite universes, yes, he's checked all of them, and his entire personality is built around making sure you never forget it. It's like if that kid from your AP physics class who wouldn't stop talking about his IQ score got access to interdimensional travel and zero therapy. Here's the thing about being the smartest person in every reality. Morality starts looking pretty optional. When you can literally portal to a dimension where problems don't exist, why bother solving them in your current one? It's the ultimate rage quit mentality, except instead of closing a video game, Rick's closing the door on entire civilizations. If we all had portal guns, we'd probably do the same thing when our Wi-Fi stops working, but that's beside the point. Rick's got the technological capability to basically be Superman. He could cure cancer, end world hunger, stop wars, the whole hero package deal. Instead, he uses that same galaxy brain energy to get blackout drunk, avoid his feelings, and treat planets like they're episodes of a TV show he can just skip when they get boring, which is exactly what we do when we don't like where a Rick and Morty episode is going. So maybe we're all the problem here. What makes Rick genuinely terrifying isn't the genius or the gadgets. It's that he knows exactly how terrible he is and has built an entire philosophical framework to justify not caring. He's weaponized nihilism. It's like if the Joker had a PhD in a spaceship. Actually, scratch that, the Joker would probably find Rick too depressing to hang out with. The scariest part? Rick's evil is contagious. Everywhere he goes, everything he builds, everyone he influences ends up reflecting his toxic worldview. He's franchise expanding his dysfunction across the multiverse. It's like McDonald's, but instead of hamburgers, they're spreading existential dread and abandonment issues. So we're diving into Rick's worst hits, not the funny burp and portal moments that make for good memes. The actual nightmare scenarios where his actions reveal what happens when infinite power meets zero accountability. Think of this as Rick's villain origin story, except the origin story is just every episode. This show really didn't bury the lead on whether Grandpa might be the bad guy. Alright, so Morty's got a crush on Jessica, which relatable. High school romance is basically psychological warfare with extra hormones. Normal grandpa move would be giving the classic just be yourself speech, maybe teaching him how to talk to girls without sounding like a stammering GPS. Rick's solution? Literally creating a date rape potion. Yes, I said it. The show itself calls it a roofie serum later, so we're just keeping it real here. In Rick Potion number 9, Morty's begging for help, and Rick initially refuses because helping his grandson with teenage problems is beneath him. Like, imagine being so far up your own genius that basic family support doesn't make the priority list. But after Morty throws what I can only describe as a justified tantrum, Rick caves and whips up this love potion using Vole DNA. For those keeping track at home, Voles mate for life, which Rick somehow thought was a great biological model for helping a 4-year-old get a date. Science. Here's where it gets spicy. Morty asks if there are side effects. Rick says it's foolproof. Then, and this is crucial after Morty leaves, Rick goes, unless she has the flu, and literally shrugs it off like he just remembered he left the oven on. There could be a catastrophic problem, and decided that information wasn't worth sharing. It's like if your Uber driver knew the bridge was out but figured you'd probably notice on your own. So Morty uses the potion at the school's flu season dance. Insert every possible red flag here. Jessica falls immediately, obsessively in love with him. She's basically acting like every parasocial Twitter stan account combined into one person. Success? Nah. Because plot twist that Rick saw coming, Jessica has the flu. She sneezes on Brad, the jock who was being a dick to Morty. Brad instantly falls in love with Morty too. Then Brad sneezes into the punch bowl and the ventilation system, because this episode said, let's speedrun the apocalypse. Within minutes, everyone at the dance wants Morty. romantically, aggressively. The principal offers a three-way. The show really went there, and honestly, respect for the commitment to chaos. The infection spreads like a TikTok trend, school to town, to state to planet. The entire human population becomes a Morty-obsessed hive mind. It's like if a boy band's fanbase became an actual plague. Rick's first fix attempt is creating an antidote using praying mantis DNA because mantises are the opposite of voles. His logic: voles mate for life, mantises mate once, then decapitate their partner, so obviously they'll cancel out. This is like trying to cure a peanut allergy by eating more peanuts. Rick doesn't test this theory, doesn't run a simulation, just releases it into the atmosphere because he's Rick, and he's always right. Spoiler, he's not right. The mantis cure transforms everyone into Cronenberg monsters. If you don't know what Cronenberg means, Google body horror and prepare to lose your lunch. We're talking exposed organs, twisted flesh, tentacles where tentacles shouldn't be, teeth in nightmare locations. 7 billion people become walking horror movie props, and they still want Morty. Earth is now a dating app from hell. Rick's response to accidentally creating planet-wide body horror? He doesn't fix it. Nope. He finds a dimension where another Rick successfully made the cure, but then conveniently died in an unrelated accident. The show literally has Rick and Morty die from an exploding device just to make this work. So Rick and Morty portal over, find their own corpses in the garage, and bury themselves in the backyard. Rick's making jokes the entire time like they're planting tulips, not committing interdimensional identity theft. Let's pause and appreciate what just happened. Rick ruined an entire planet. His actual daughter Beth, his son-in-law Jerry, his granddaughter Summer, they're all stuck in Monster Mash, the Nightmare Edition, because Grandpa couldn't be bothered to mention one side effect. The original Beth is living in a Mad Max hellscape right now, fighting Cronenberg creatures with a machete, wondering where her dad and son went. Rick didn't even leave a note, just ghosted them harder than your situationship after 3 months of, we should hang out sometime. And Morty? This 4-year-old kid had to bury his own corpse. Let me repeat that for the people in the back. Bury his own corpse. Then he's gotta live in Dead Him's house, sleep in Dead Him's bed, pretend to be Dead Him for his entire family. That's therapy bills for lifetimes, plural. Rick casually mentions they can only do this 3 or 4 more times. Tops, like he's talking about a Subway punch card, not the most existentially horrifying experience a human can have. When Morty asks about the reality they abandoned, Rick drops this absolute gem. What about the reality where Hitler cured cancer? The answer is don't think about it, which is basically Rick's life philosophy in one sentence. Also, what a weird hypothetical to have locked and loaded Rick. You okay, buddy? The worst part? Rick tries to blame Morty for asking for the love potion in the first place, calling him a little creep and comparing it to roofies. But my guy, you made it. You're the one with the chemistry set and the complete lack of adult supervision over your own actions. Every single disaster, the flu complication, the mantis mutation, the dimensional genocide, traces back to Rick being too arrogant to admit he might have missed something. This episode reveals Rick's core evil. Infinite dimensions mean 0 consequences. One Earth gets destroyed, there are infinite replacement Earths in the multiverse. One family gets traumatized, infinite replacement families. People aren't people to Rick, they're NPCs in a game with infinite respawn points. Which is a little too meta considering we literally watch this as entertainment, but we're not here to examine our own moral culpability as viewers. Or are we? The episode ends with original Beth, Jerry, and Summer surviving in the Wasteland. Beth admits she's finally happy now that Rick's gone. Meanwhile, our Rick and Morty are settling into New Earth like they just moved to a different apartment complex. There's even a final twist showing Cronenberg, Rick, and Morty in a reverse situation. They turned everyone into normal humans and had to flee to our Cronenberg world. It's turtles all the way down, and every turtle is a different flavor of Rick screwing up. Rick Potion #9 is Rick's evil in pure form. Create a problem through arrogance, make it worse through recklessness, abandon it through apathy, and deflect blame through manipulation. An entire planet of people are monsters because Rick couldn't be bothered to mention one side effect. That's Bond villain activity, except Bond villains usually have the decency to monologue about their evil plan instead of pretending it's no big deal. And yes, the show won an Emmy. We're all complicit here. Now moving on to the next Rick's evil moment, it's in the Vat of Acid episode. Rick builds a reality-hopping murder machine disguised as a video game save button, lets his grandson unknowingly commit mass murder for months, then reveals the truth at the worst possible moment. All because Morty said his fake acid vat idea was dumb. The Vat of Acid episode starts with Rick's escape plan. They're doing a crystal deal that'll obviously go wrong, so Rick sets up a fake acid vat among real ones. It's got air hoses and quick-release bones at the bottom. If things go bad, they jump in, Rick releases the bones, bad guys think they melted to death. Foolproof, right? Morty calls it a shitty idea. Rick's ego cannot handle this. When the deal actually does go wrong, and they have to use the vat, it works perfectly. But Morty won't shut up about how stupid the plan was. This triggers the pettiest argument in the show's history. Morty starts talking about all his ideas that Rick dismisses, specifically a save point device, like in video games. Something that lets you try stuff in real life, then reload to a saved moment if it goes wrong. Rick says he saw it on Futurama, calls it time travel, says it's beneath him. Morty keeps needling him. Just admit you can't do it. Over and over. You can't do it, Rick. It's like watching someone poke a sleeping dragon with a stick. Except the dragon has a god complex and access to infinite dimensions. Rick snaps. He calls Morty at 3 a.m. pretending to apologize, saying he tried and failed to build it, really selling the shame and vulnerability. Morty falls for it completely, starts giving Rick a pep talk about communication and honesty. Then Rick flips. Or maybe I'll just kill you. Because he did build it. He built the whole thing just to prove Morty wrong. This is where Rick's evil really starts cooking. He hands Morty the device and gives him a choice. Listen to Rick explain in detail how it works, or just have fun with it. Morty picks fun. Rick's got him. Morty goes absolutely feral with this thing. He's living consequence-free life like it's Grand Theft Auto with cheat codes enabled, slapping Jerry repeatedly, doing whatever he wants in class, pulling off elaborate stunts. Eventually, he catches Jessica's attention, and she tells him she likes who he found, this confident, self-assured version of himself. They start building something real. Morty's falling in love, having actual conversations, building a relationship, and every time something goes slightly wrong or he wants to optimize an interaction, he just hits reset and tries again. There's this whole montage set to The Way You Use It, where Morty's just living his best life, confidence through the roof, Jessica's into him, he's finally got everything he wanted. It looks like a happy ending, character growth. The nerdy kid finally got the girl through newfound confidence, except Rick's just watching, waiting, letting Morty dig himself deeper and deeper into whatever hole Rick's prepared for him. Then Rick drops the bomb. Morty comes back after his consequence-free journey, talking about how he learned that we are who we are because of consequences, and he can't live without them anymore. Very mature, very philosophical. Rick goes, "That's beautiful, but no, because there were consequences. Morty did everything. It all happened. The device wasn't a save point or time travel. Rick doesn't respect time travel. If Ant-Man and the Wasp can do it, I'm not interested." Instead, Rick built something worse. Every time Morty hit that button, he wasn't going back in time. He was jumping to a parallel dimension where events played out almost identically, and a version of him already existed there. The device solved for that duplicate by incinerating the alternate Morty and letting our Morty take his place. Rick literally calls it The Prestige, the movie where a magician clones and kills himself for every magic trick. Every single reset means Morty murdered another version of himself. Every time he wanted to smell Jessica's hair again, every time he redid a satisfying moment, that's how many Mortys he burned alive. Morty's completely shattered. "How many did I kill?" Rick tells him. "You tell me. Every reset, every optimization, every do-over. That's the body count." And the worst part? Rick reveals he's not even Morty's Rick. Every Rick has a vat. This was a setup from the start. Rick built this, knowing exactly what would happen, knowing Morty would abuse it, knowing he'd build a life with Jessica, knowing the reveal would destroy him. All to teach Morty one lesson: never doubt Rick's abilities. The immediate aftermath is brutal. Morty's freaking out about all the Mortys he killed. Rick offers a solution. He can merge the probable realities so only one Morty experienced all of it, make the dead ones purely theoretical. But first, consequences. Rick portals Morty back to his home dimension where literally everyone is waiting to kill him. SWAT teams, drug dealers, Me Too activists, the ACLU, the NAACP, Gamergate, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Turns out in Morty's consequence-free spree, he pissed off everyone. They're all there with guns and lawsuits. Morty's surrounded. No way out. He's screaming, "What do I do?" Rick just shrugs. Seems like there's no way out unless... And you can see it coming. The vat. Rick makes Morty admit the Vat of Acid was a good idea, makes him kiss the vat. Full humiliation ritual. Then Morty jumps in to fake his death, and Rick releases the bones. Everyone thinks he's dead, all debts paid. They literally start having a philosophical discussion about justice and mercy while staring at Morty's bones. This episode is Rick at his most calculating. He didn't accidentally create a problem like the Cronenberg situation. He engineered a multi-month psychological torture device specifically to break Morty down, reveal he's a mass murderer, and force him to admit Rick was right about the stupid vat. The relationship with Jessica? Real to Morty, but built on a foundation of corpses. The character growth? Poisoned by the knowledge of what it cost. Rick could have warned him at any point. He chose not to. He chose to watch and wait for maximum damage. The episode ends with Rick revealing they're not even in their home dimension. He wouldn't waste their actual reality teaching Morty a lesson. In this dimension, Johnny Carson's still alive, and 9/11 never happened. They portal home while an acid-proof guy gets dropped into real acid on The Tonight Show. Business as usual. Now, moving on to Rick's next evil moment. And keep watching the video because we'll give a clear level on Rick's evilness out of 10. Rick has a secret underground memory vault that looks like something out of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, except way more horrifying because Jim Carrey isn't there to make it poignant. Thousands of color-coded vials line the walls, each one containing a memory so traumatic that Morty literally begged Rick to erase it from his brain. Morty's Mind Blowers opens with Morty absolutely losing it over something called the Truth Tortoise. He looked into its eyes during an adventure and now knows everything, which is destroying his mental state faster than a Reddit user discovering their favorite show got cancelled. Rick takes him down to this massive circular archive and drops the reveal. They've done this whole routine before, multiple times. Morty doesn't remember asking for memory erasure because Rick erased those memories too. Recursive memory deletion like a psychological Matryoshka doll. The vials are color-coded. Blue ones are Morty's fault. Purple ones are the family's fault. Red ones are Rick's fault. The sheer volume is staggering walls, completely covered in years of erased trauma. Rick jokes about file names like Booger AIDS and Poop AIDS _copy, treating his grandson's psychological destruction like a filing system problem. He literally breaks the fourth wall and tells the camera they're doing this instead of interdimensional cable, turning Morty's mental health into a clip show format. Here's what makes this whole setup fundamentally twisted. Rick goes on dangerous adventures with his grandson. Horrible things happen, and instead of stopping the adventures or getting Morty actual therapy, Rick just deletes the trauma and hits replay. Morty experiences something awful, begs to forget, Rick erases it, they go on another adventure. Morty never builds up enough accumulated horror to say, maybe I should stop going through portals with the alcoholic scientist. Rick's essentially running a trauma subscription service. One memory shows exactly how Rick operates on the petty cruelty scale. Morty flips the wrong light switch in Rick's garage. That's the entire mistake. Wrong switch. Rick makes Morty help him bury bodies. Multiple human corpses. The punishment for using the left switch instead of the right is forcing a child to be an accessory to whatever Rick did. Then Rick makes Morty physically dig the memory out with a shovel and erase it. Your average person would say, no, the other one. Rick went full Goodfellas over a light switch. The Mr. Lunas incident reveals what happens when Rick just watches disasters unfold. Morty looks through a telescope and sees what he thinks is a man threatening him from the moon. He becomes obsessed, starts stalking the school's new guidance counselor because he thinks he's the moon guy. Morty's accusations get the counselor fired. The man commits suicide. Marines hold a funeral where they talk about how, from a certain angle, he looked like a smudge. Because it was a smudge on the telescope lens the whole time. A thumbprint got a man killed. Rick could have just looked at the telescope. Could have checked Morty's claim before an innocent man lost everything. Instead, he watched the whole tragedy play out, then erased Morty's memory so his grandson wouldn't have to live with causing someone's death. That's enabling an endless cycle by hitting the factory reset button every time consequences show up. There's a memory with a floop-floopian alien who wants Rick to kill him for religious reasons. Their species believes they get an eternal orgasm afterlife if killed by a great warrior, which honestly sounds like someone pitched a Rick and Morty joke that got too real. Before Rick can do it, Morty has lunch with the alien and casually asks, wait, you guys have actual proof of your afterlife though, right? The alien has a complete existential breakdown. When Rick finally kills him, the alien goes to a hell dimension, screaming, torture, the works because doubt invalidated his faith. Morty watches someone burn in hell because he asked a reasonable question. Rick erases that memory and finishes the alien's leftover chimichanga. Then we get the squirrels incident, which is completely unhinged. Morty asks Rick to let him talk to animals. Standard Disney princess request. Rick does it. Morty overhears squirrels discussing destabilizing Argentina's economy, installing puppet governments, and picking the next pope. The squirrels run the world. They notice Morty can understand them and immediately attack. Rick has to portal them to a completely new dimension because Morty eavesdropped on the squirrel Illuminati. Remember how Rick said they can only dimension hop 3 or 4 more times before they're stuck forever? Morty just burned one of those limited escapes on squirrels. At one point, Rick and Morty accidentally wipe their own memories and wake up not knowing who they are. They're surrounded by thousands of vials with zero context. Even without memories, Morty looks around and has an existential crisis. He says, "What's the point of going on if most of everything that happens just ends up sitting in here?" That's the horror Rick's been hiding. Most of Morty's experiences with Rick end up in jars. There's a memory where Rick shows Morty true level, perfect physical levelness. Morty experiences objective perfection for one moment. Afterward, everything in reality looks crooked to him. He's screaming, "Reality is poison. I can't live like this." Rick had to erase it because showing Morty cosmic perfection broke his ability to function. Rick did this for absolutely no reason except to flex his technology. Then memory wiped Morty when it went badly. The episode reveals this has happened before through Summer, who finds them mid-crisis and goes, "Oh man, it's a Scenario 4. Scenario 4. Rick has numbered protocols for when memory erasure spirals out of control. That means it's gone wrong enough times that he developed a classification system. What makes this deeply sinister is Rick built infrastructure to perpetually reset his grandson's trauma response. Every erased memory is evidence that Rick chose to continue adventures over Morty's mental health. The archive proves Rick knew the damage he was causing. He kept receipts and decided the solution was a reset button rather than stopping. Morty never accumulates enough psychological damage to quit because Rick's running system restore on his brain every few weeks. The episode ends exactly where it started. They erase everything and go back to watching interdimensional cable. The vials stay on the shelves. The adventures continue. Morty will ask to forget again. Now we'll be moving on to our next episode to find Rick's evilness scale. Infinite versions of Rick built a society together and somehow made it worse than regular Earth. Like, you'd think with unlimited genius-level intellects, they'd at least figure out basic infrastructure, but nope, they created the Citadel of Ricks, which is basically Blade Runner meets The Wire, except everyone's an alcoholic scientist with god complexes. The Ricklantis mix-up is the show going, "Hey, you know what would be fun? Let's do a prestige HBO drama but make it entirely about the supporting characters from our C-plot." Our Rick destroyed the original Council of Ricks in an earlier season, leaving the Citadel in post-apocalyptic chaos. Now they're rebuilding with their first democratic election, which should tell you everything you need to know about how well that's gonna go. Democracy speedrun, any percent, straight to fascism. The episode follows multiple storylines, like it's trying to win an Emmy for most ambitious animated episode. There's Cop Rick, a rookie partnered with Cop Morty in what's basically training day if Denzel Washington was 14 years old. There's a group of Morty students about to graduate and get assigned to new Ricks, which is somehow both adorable and deeply dystopian. There's factory worker Rick J, 22, who's been stamping cookies for 15 years. And there's candidate Morty running for president against 5 Ricks who treat his campaign like a Make-A-Wish kid running for class president. The factory storyline is where things get properly nightmare fuel. Rick J, 22 works at Simple Rick's wafer cookie factory, and the secret ingredient is trauma. There's an actual Rick Simple Rick strapped into a chair with a helmet harvesting his brain chemicals. They captured one specific memory of him watching his daughter blow out birthday candles, loop it endlessly in his head, and extract the happy chemicals his brain produces. Those chemicals flavor the cookies. This is basically if Willy Wonka ran Guantanamo Bay as a snack food business. The commercial literally says we captured that moment and run it on a loop through Simple Rick's mind, like they're bragging about it. Nesquik could never. Rick J, 22, has his office space moment. His supervisor gets promoted despite being identical to him, same IQ, same everything, and he realizes the Citadel's been gaslighting worker Ricks into thinking they're special while paying them in pocket lint. During a presidential debate where candidate Morty gives a surprisingly good speech about inequality, Rick J, 22 shoots his supervisor and takes hostages in the flavor core. Very relatable workplace behavior, honestly. When Rick demands a portal gun to escape, the negotiators give him one. He immediately turns off Simple Rick's torture machine and tries to free him by pushing him through the portal. Touching moment of worker solidarity, except the portal goes to the Blender dimension, Simple Rick gets liquefied, like he's auditioning for Final Destination. Rick realizes too late he got played harder than anyone who believed Fire Festival was gonna be cool. Here's where it gets properly evil. The factory owner, Rick D. Sanchez III, dressed like the Monopoly Man's evil twin, walks into the standoff and gives this beautiful speech about Rick freedom and standing up to the system. He leads Rick J22 out of the factory to cheering crowds, hands him fancy car keys, then shoots him in the back of the head. They hook J22's corpse into the Simple Rick machine and harvest HIS memory of that walk to freedom. New product, Simple Rick Freedom Wafer Selects, now with the taste of false hope and murdered dreams. They literally commodified a workers' revolution into a limited edition cookie flavor. That's capitalism's final boss fight. The cop storyline is Law and Order, Space Crimes Unit. Cop Morty is a veteran detective with serious anger management issues. When they investigate a robbery in Mortytown, the slums where Rickless Mortys live, because apparently the Citadel has ghettos, Cop Morty immediately goes full bad cop by shoving a gun in a suspect's mouth. Cop Rick's all, maybe we shouldn't torture teenagers, and Cop Morty's like, you and your sensitivity training. Classic generational divide, except with more police brutality. They track the robbery to the Mortytown locos, who are working with a bootleg portal fluid dealer in a setup that looks like Breaking Bad if Walter White was everyone's grandpa. During the raid, Cop Rick gets stabbed. Cop Morty sends him to get medical supplies, then blows up the entire building with all the handcuffed suspects inside. When Cop Rick asks what happened, Cop Morty casually lies. Same old story, Morty's killing Mortys. That's a war crime with a badge. Internal Affairs is gonna have some questions, but spoiler alert, they won't. Turns out Cop Morty's on a crime lord's payroll. Big Morty runs Mortytown like a mafia don, and Cop Morty's been his enforcer. When Cop Rick refuses dirty money because he's got this whole integrity thing, the situation escalates. Cop Morty pretends to have an emotional breakdown, crying about wanting to be a regular kid who throws balls and masturbates, which is weirdly specific, then shoots Big Morty. The second Cop Rick lowers his gun. Cop Rick immediately shoots Cop Morty. It's the circle of life, but with more police corruption. Cop Rick gets arrested, but the charges mysteriously vanish because there's a new department, new codes. Nothing suspicious about that. Meanwhile, candidate Morty wins the presidential election, despite every Rick treating him like the adorable puppy trying to play poker with the adults. His campaign manager discovers documents proving candidate Morty is actually Evil Morty, the one from that other episode everyone freaked out about. He tries to assassinate Morty at a rally, but only wounds him, which gives Morty the sympathy vote. Political strategy: get shot, win election, can't argue with results. President Morty's first order of business is meeting the Shadow Council of Ricks, 7 Ricks, who've been running the Citadel from behind the scenes like the Illuminati, but with more lab coats. They explain that presidents are just figureheads, and they're actually in charge. President Morty asks them to raise their hands if they agree with that assessment. They all do. He snaps his fingers, and police execute all 7 immediately with shock lasers. Just murders them in their seats like it's a normal Tuesday. He keeps 2 alive as puppet advisors, because every evil regime needs middle management. The episode ends with President Morty giving a villain monologue, while bodies float in space outside the Citadel. The final shot reveals dozens of corpses, Ricks and Mortys, who got in his way, drifting past the windows, like the world's most depressing screensaver. Among the debris are documents showing Evil Morty's whole fake identity and manipulation scheme. But they're floating in space now, so who cares, right? Here's what makes this properly horrifying. Our Rick destroyed the council and bounced. He could have stuck around to help rebuild, maybe prevent the whole fascism thing. Instead, thousands of other Ricks filled the void and built systematic oppression like they were speedrunning dystopia. They enslaved Mortys through schools that literally train them to be obedient sidekicks. They torture Ricks by harvesting their joy for corporate profit. They murder dissenters and call it democracy. The Citadel proves that Rick's philosophy doesn't just destroy individuals, it destroys civilizations. When infinite geniuses work together, they don't build utopia. They build a police state with cookie-flavored torture and really good PR. The show literally does a fake-out, where Rick and Morty go to Atlantis instead of the Citadel, then spends the entire episode on Citadel stories anyway. Maximum trolling. And it works because watching Rick's toxic worldview play out on a societal scale is way more interesting than watching him fight mermaid robots or whatever. This episode won an Emmy, by the way. The Television Academy really said, yes, the cookie torture episode deserves recognition. They're not wrong, but still. Rick has an ex who controls entire planets. Not in a metaphorical, she was really manipulative way, but literally, Unity is a hive mind entity that assimilates billions of people. When they reconnect, Rick doesn't just ruin Unity's life. He ruins billions of lives simultaneously because Unity is billions of lives. That's a disaster movie with feelings. Autoerotic assimilation kicks off with Rick excited about a distress beacon, because 9 out of 10 times it's a ship full of dead aliens. Man's out here treating space like a cosmic yard sale where everyone's dead. They find 6 crew members who escaped a planet taken over by a hive mind. Then 2 of them screech and assimilate the other 4. Plot twist, it's Unity, Rick's ex-girlfriend who can possess entire populations. Rick introduces Unity to his grandkids like he's bringing home a perfectly normal date and not a planet-controlling consciousness, currently puppeting 6 alien bodies. Family dinners at the Sanchez house must be wild. Unity's taken over an entire planet since their breakup, achieved world peace, eliminated crime, created a unified society where prostitutes became scientists, and homeless people became philosophers. Unity's basically running the world's most aggressive self-help program, except nobody consented to it. The plan? Become a Type 1 civilization, join the Galactic Federation, assimilate more planets, and eventually become God. That's a LinkedIn bio that really escalates. Rick's response to this galaxy conquest plan? That's pretty sexy. Hey listen, where can I get a drink around here? Man's got priorities, and they're all terrible. Here's where Rick becomes the friend who shows up to your sober living facility with a case of beer. Unity explains they phased out recreational substances because there's no need to escape from the self when your world is one. Very zen, very healthy. Rick immediately counters with, remember when you assimilated a whole police station just to get your hands on the evidence locker? He's literally peer pressuring a hive mind. Within seconds, Unity caves. This is like if someone in recovery ran into their toxic ex at Whole Foods and suddenly they're doing shots in the parking lot. Rick's requests get progressively more unhinged. He wants a hang glider, a crotchless Uncle Sam costume, and the entire field of your largest stadium covered end to end with naked redheads. Plus, the stands packed with every man that remotely resembles my father. This man is using thousands of assimilated bodies to stage some kind of Freudian nightmare Olympics. That's conscripting a population for your therapy session. Somewhere, Sigmund Freud is taking notes and feeling deeply uncomfortable. Beta 7 shows up, another hive mind species that's Unity's diplomatic ally, and very obviously has a crush on Unity. Beta 7's giving off major, I'm a nice hive mind energy. When Rick touches Beta 7, every single assimilated body screams and points at him simultaneously, which is basically the entire planet going, this dude is bad news. Rick responds by suggesting he and Unity make drugs together, using Beta 7's resources. They create fractal dust and velocitinous using powdered neutronium, which sounds like what happens when Breaking Bad meets Doctor Who. Rick's getting a planet-controlling entity high on cosmic substances while its diplomatic ally watches. That's incident report to the Galactic Federation bad. The drug spiral hits fast. Unity starts losing control of the assimilation. People begin de-assimilating across the planet. When Unity suggests maybe slowing down, Rick asks Unity to bomb a town for fun. Unity does it, just casually commits an airstrike, then goes, oh, it's okay, I evacuated. Like that makes recreational bombing acceptable. Unity admits to being drunk, while running 200,000 pediatric hospitals and 12 million deep fryers. That's the most terrifying multitasking flex ever. Imagine your surgeon being like, yeah, I'm wasted, but I'm also flying a plane and teaching kindergarten. It's fine. Summer tries to free people from Unity's control, which immediately triggers a race war. Turns out this planet has 2 races divided by nipple shapes, cone nipples versus ring nipples. The show really said, let's do a very special episode about racism, but make it about nipple geometry. Within minutes of regaining free will, they're trying to kill each other. Morty casually goes, first race war, huh? To Summer, like he's a veteran of interspecies conflict at age 14. The planet descends into Mad Max-style chaos. Unity has to send in SWAT teams just to stop everyone from murdering each other. Unity admits, I'm having fun with your grandpa, lost a little control while drunk piloting a helicopter. That's the political equivalent of, whoops, left the oven on, except the oven is an entire civilization. Summer and Morty stage an intervention. Summer drops possibly the best relationship metaphor ever. You and Unity are like leggings and mid-calf boots. You think you're great together, but you're just bringing out the worst in each other. Fashion critique as emotional honesty. Rick's defense? He literally has Unity create fake news broadcasts defending their relationship. Man's so manipulative he's gaslighting via state-controlled media. When Summer asks Rick to leave because you love us, Rick responds that Summer's just a hyper-emotional, needy little human, and he can tolerate it but can't give a crap about it. Father of the Year, everyone, really crushing those emotional availability goals. Unity breaks up with Rick via note. Every surface in the entire town is covered with breakup letters, which is the most extra way to end a relationship since Adele wrote Someone Like You. Unity writes, I lose who I am and become part of you. Because in a strange way, you're better at what I do without even trying. Unity's a hive mind designed to absorb identities, and Rick's influence is so toxic that Unity loses itself. Rick out-assimilated the assimilator. That's like being so messy you make a tornado look organized. The episode ends dark. Rick builds a suicide device in his garage, tests it on an alien creature, then positions it over his own head. He passes out drunk at the last second, accidentally dodging the blast. The show cuts to Jerry happily gardening the next morning, completely oblivious to the death machine inside. The tonal shift from suicide attempt to suburban dad trims hedges is so abrupt, it gives you emotional whiplash. Do you feel it? By Chaos plays over the whole sequence, turning an indie pop song into a suicide soundtrack. Good luck hearing that at a coffee shop ever again. Rick destabilized an entity controlling billions. His presence caused Unity to endanger pediatric hospitals, trigger race wars, abandon diplomatic relationships, and spiral so badly that Unity had to flee to another sector of space. Unity literally says, "You're better at what I do." Rick destroys identities more effectively than a hive mind designed to erase them. The relationship left both parties in crisis. Unity fled across the galaxy. Rick built a death machine. That's mutual destruction with a body count. Rick doesn't ruin lives through direct action alone. He ruins them through proximity, through being himself near people who make the mistake of caring about him. The hive mind that controls planets couldn't survive being loved by Rick Sanchez. Now Rick gets 8/5 because his evil operates like a franchise. 17. He's got locations on multiple levels of reality doing damage simultaneously. Personal evil? He built a torture device that tricked Morty into mass murder just to prove a point about being right. Planetary evil? He's got at least 2 abandoned Earth dimensions where everyone's either a Cronenberg monster or dead. Systematic evil? His philosophy is so toxic that when Infinite Ricks tried building a society, they all independently created the same fascist nightmare with literal torture factories. Relationship evil? He corrupted a hive mind, controlling billions of people so badly it had to leave the galaxy. That's being fundamentally dangerous at every possible scale. What this means is Rick is architecturally terrible. His damage has infrastructure. The memory archive in his garage proves he's been systematically erasing consequences for years. The Citadel proves his worldview, creates oppression, even when he's not directly involved. The Cronenberg dimension proves his carelessness has extinction-level consequences. Rick's evil is load-bearing. It holds up entire systems of dysfunction across multiple realities. Here's why he's not a 10. He's capable of love. Not good at it, barely functional with it, but capable. He gave Morty the time collar to save his life. He turned himself in to save his family from the Federation. These aren't accidents or manipulations. They're genuine moments where Rick chose sacrifice over self-interest. A true 10/10 villain can't do that. They're broken in a way that makes compassion impossible. Rick's broken in a way that makes compassion painful, so he avoids it. That's different. Worse in some ways because it means he knows better and chooses worse anyway, but it keeps him south of maximum evil. The second thing preventing a 10 is motivation. Rick's not a sadist. He doesn't hurt people because watching them suffer brings him joy. He hurts people because he's operating on a scale where individual suffering is background noise. When you've got infinite realities in your peripheral vision, one destroyed Earth is a rounding error. That's nihilistic evil, not malicious evil. The Joker wants to watch things burn because chaos is funny. Rick just doesn't care if things burn because nothing matters anyway. Somehow that's bleaker. But let's talk body count for a second. Rick has killed more people than Thanos, and Thanos needed a magical glove to hit those numbers. Cronenberg Earth is 7 billion casualties from one date night gone wrong. The Vat of Acid episode is hundreds of dead Mortys over what was essentially a told you so moment. The Citadel operates on oppression, affecting millions. Unity's planet nearly imploded into civil war because Rick wanted to party. His damage isn't contained to one universe. 2C, it sprawls across the multiverse like the world's worst going away present. Every dimension Rick touches gets measurably worse. What makes Rick genuinely dangerous isn't the portal gun or the genius IQ, it's that he makes evil look functional. He maintains relationships, holds family dinners, solves impossible problems, saves the day occasionally, all while leaving trauma and corpses scattered across infinite realities. He's proof you don't need to be a cackling supervillain to cause supervillain-level damage. You just need to be smart, careless, and charismatic enough that people forgive you until it's too late. That's 8.5. Rick's a monster who's just functional enough to avoid being treated like one. He's got enough humanity left to occasionally do the right thing, but not enough to stop doing terrible things the rest of the time. He's not irredeemable, but he's absolutely unforgivable. And somehow we're still watching him every week because he's funny about it. That's the real evil trick, making you laugh while the bodies pile up. Now let's find out how evil Morty is, but before that, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Morty started as the innocent foil, scared, naive, moral. The kid who stammered through adventures while Rick burped through explanations. Classic sidekick energy. But you don't survive years with Rick Sanchez without something breaking inside you. Or maybe not breaking, maybe revealing what was always there. Here's the thing about Morty. He's been to hundreds of dimensions, watched countless people die, nearly died himself, more times than we can count, and had his trauma systematically erased whenever it got too inconvenient. That's weaponization. Rick didn't corrupt Morty so much as he gave him permission to access parts of himself that most 4-year-olds never discover. The capacity for violence, the enjoyment of power, the understanding that in infinite realities, individual lives don't actually matter that much. The show loves playing with this transformation. Early Morty is pure anxiety, stammering, doubting, begging Rick to do the right thing. Later Morty still stammers, still doubts, but when push comes to shove, he'll commit atrocities without hesitation. He's not a villain. He's something worse, a good kid who's learned that being good is optional depending on context. That's more dangerous than Rick's nihilism, because Morty still thinks he's one of the good guys. What makes Morty's arc genuinely dark is that he's self-aware about it. He knows he's changing. He knows Rick's influence is toxic. He calls it out constantly. But he keeps going on adventures anyway because he's addicted to the validation, the excitement, the feeling of mattering in a universe that's shown him he doesn't. Morty's not a victim anymore. He's a willing participant who occasionally feels bad about it. The real question isn't whether Morty's evil, it's whether good intentions still matter when you're capable of such darkness. Does it count as moral if you have to actively suppress your enjoyment of violence? Is Morty a good person fighting his worst instincts, or a bad person who occasionally remembers to feel guilty? The show never answers this. Instead, it just keeps showing us Morty getting darker while maintaining his nervous stammer and his belief that he's fundamentally different from Rick. Spoiler alert, the gap's closing. Morty discovers he really enjoys murder. Not in a "this is necessary for survival" way. In a shooting corpses while screaming and laughing way. The episode is basically The Purge meets a 4-year-old's therapy breakthrough. Except the breakthrough is, turns out I'm capable of gleeful violence. Look Who's Purging Now starts with Rick and Morty stopping on a planet for wiper fluid because apparently space has bugs. Standard road trip maintenance. Local guy warns them to leave before sundown because that's when the festival begins. Rick immediately clocks what this is. It's a purge planet. One night a year where everyone runs around murdering each other without consequences. Then they're peaceful the rest of the time. It's like if Black Friday was a governmental policy. Morty's horrified. Rick wants to watch because of course he does. They compromise by Rick watching while Morty protests, which is basically their entire relationship dynamic. Rick gets excited watching the violence through the windshield like it's drive-in theater for psychopaths, then immediately gets nauseous. Man, speedran, I thought I wanted to see murder, but actually it's gross in about 30 seconds. Character growth, any percent. But then they see a girl named Arthresia being chased by purgers. Morty insists they save her using the ultimate leverage, threatening to tell Beth. Blackmail as family bonding. Very healthy relationship dynamics happening here. They rescue Arthresia, who seems sweet and grateful. She asks to go back for her grandmother. Rick and Morty agree, because apparently nobody on this show learned pattern recognition from literally any horror movie ever made. Arthresia shoots Rick in the liver, steals the ship, and leaves them stranded. The damsel in distress was actually playing Grand Theft Spaceship the whole time. Rick got shot for being helpful, which is the universe's way of saying, stick to your brand, old man. Now Rick and Morty are on foot during an active purge. Rick's bleeding from a liver shot, the hardest working liver in the galaxy according to him, which tracks. They have no weapons, and they're surrounded by purgers, dressed like a spirit Halloween threw up. Rick throws some kind of disintegration device that vaporizes the first wave of attackers, then casually admits he only had one of those, and is now holding a box of Tic Tacs. Bluffing with breath mints during a murder festival is very on-brand crisis management. They make it to a lighthouse where the keeper agrees to let them send a beacon to Summer back on Earth. The price? Morty has to listen to his entire screenplay. Yes, his screenplay. The lighthouse keeper has written a full script, and Morty's being held hostage by artistic sharing. This is psychological torture, dressed up as networking. The keeper reads his whole screenplay out loud, while Morty slowly dies inside. When asked for honest feedback, Morty tries being diplomatic, but eventually admits he didn't like the 3 weeks earlier structure. The keeper gets offended and kicks them out. Morty, desperate to keep the beacon active, tells him the script is genuinely terrible. They fight. Morty pushes him down the stairs. The keeper dies. Morty's first kill. He immediately drops a one-liner. "You like that? You want me to cut to 3 weeks earlier when you were alive?" Man went from accidental manslaughter to quippy action hero in under 5 seconds. That's character development on fast forward. Rick's reaction is perfect. "Whoa, Morty, you just purged." Like he's announcing Morty lost his virginity but for murder. Then something shifts. They find Rick's ship and have to fight through purgers to reach it. Rick's still injured and can barely function. Morty picks up weapons and starts killing. Not defensive killing. Not reluctant killing. Enthusiastic killing set to Feels Good by Tony. Tone, the show literally scored Morty's murder spree like it's a workout montage. He's laughing, screaming, executing people who are already dead. Rick Sanchez, tells him to calm down. When Rick is your voice of reason about violence, you've lapped the moral compass. Rick tries redirecting. "I think those people were just hiding." Morty, "I don't give a shit. Just unloading bullets into corpses while cackling." Rick has to explicitly point out, "Okay, Morty, now you're just shooting corpses." Morty keeps going like he's grinding for XP in a video game, except the game is real life, and the XP is trauma. Rick eventually stuns him unconscious because talking wasn't working. Morty went so hard into murder mode that Rick had to hit the emergency off switch. Here's where it gets dark. When Morty wakes up, Rick immediately offers an explanation. Those candy bars they ate earlier contained purginol, a chemical that amplifies violent tendencies. Morty's relieved. "Thank goodness for that, huh? That's a relief." Rick agrees, saying Morty's character's totally protected. Very meta. Very on the nose about TV writing. Then the camera shows Rick throwing away a candy bar wrapper. The label reads, "Now purginol free." The bars never had purginol. Morty did all that sober. This reveal is the show going, "Surprise, your protagonist has a violence kink, and it's not because of drugs." Morty didn't massacre people because of chemical enhancement. He did it because years of trauma, suppressed rage, and repeated exposure to Rick's adventures finally found an outlet where it was socially acceptable. Rick gave him permission by saying purging was okay. Morty took that permission and sprinted with it until Rick had to physically stop him. The violence wasn't external. It was built in and waiting for the right excuse. What makes this genuinely disturbing is how much Morty enjoyed it. The laughing, the creative zingers, the refusal to stop even when threats were neutralized. Rick spent the episode talking about Morty's repressed rage, and Morty kept denying it like someone in the anger management denial stage. Turns out Rick diagnosed it correctly. Morty's been carrying around years of anger from being dragged across dimensions, watching people die, nearly dying himself repeatedly, and having his memories erased every time it gets too bad. The purge flipped the release valve, and Morty discovered murder feels great actually. Rick's disturbed reaction sells it. Rick has seen everything. He's committed countless atrocities across infinite realities. But watching his grandson transform into a gleeful murder machine genuinely unsettles him. When the most desensitized person in the multiverse thinks you're overdoing it, that's a red flag the size of a planet. Rick expected self-defense. Instead, Morty discovered he's got a talent for violence, and the talent comes with a dopamine rush. The episode ends with Morty back to normal after helping Arthresia overthrow the rich people who created the purge system. Once the permission structure disappears, the violence valve closes. But we've seen what's underneath now. Morty's not the innocent kid Rick corrupts episode by episode. He's the innocent kid who's already corrupted and just needed the right circumstances to realize it. The candy bar reveal is the show admitting, this isn't about external influence. This is what happens when you expose a teenager to infinite violence and expect him not to develop a taste for it. Rick lied about the purginol to protect Morty's self-image. Really, he was protecting himself from admitting what he's turned his grandson into. Someone who needs excuses to not murder people rather than reasons to do it. That's transformation. And the show made sure we know it's permanent by having Rick lie about it being temporary. Now let's move on to our second episode for Morty. Morty gets a personality upgrade and immediately becomes a stock market sociopath who treats women like collectible trading cards. Turns out the things that made him weak were actually the things that made him human. Who knew anxiety was load-bearing for your moral compass? Rest and Ricklaxation starts with Rick and Morty barely surviving a 6-day adventure that was supposed to be 20 minutes in and out. They escape an exploding facility by pure luck, then immediately have matching panic attacks in the garage. Rick's hands are shaking, Morty's crying. Rick admits he might hate himself and think he deserves to die. This is the most emotionally honest Rick's been in the entire series, and it only happens because he's having a breakdown. Character growth through trauma, very healthy. They decide to take a vacation at an alien spa. After getting swallowed and regurgitated by a giant pink creature for relaxation, they try a psychological detox machine that removes cognitive toxins. The machine explodes in a bright flash. Except it didn't explode. It worked perfectly. The bright flash was just the machine doing its job, which apparently involves splitting you into two separate entities, the healthy you and the toxic you. Toxic Rick and Toxic Morty wake up in a gross, mucky wasteland inside the containment unit. They're made of literal sludge and trapped in what looks like the world's worst escape room. Toxic Rick is screaming, aggressive, and calling Toxic Morty worthless. Toxic Morty is crying and saying he wants to die. These are the parts the machine considered toxic and removed. Meanwhile, detoxed Rick and Morty walk out of the spa happy, relaxed, and apologizing to people. Rick apologizes for being rude. They listen to random music together and bond. It's unsettling how wholesome it is. Detoxed, Morty goes to school, and suddenly he's the most popular kid there. He roasts Mr. Goldenfold in front of the whole class. Everyone's asking him for advice. He's giving motivational speeches about music being in your heart the whole time. A bully admits he's also faking confidence, and they bond over it. It's like Morty speedran becoming a life coach. Jessica notices and tells him word around school is he's become super healthy. He asks her out using a joke about having taken you to dinner-itis. It's smooth, in a way that makes you uncomfortable. They go to dinner. This is where detoxed Morty reveals himself as actually terrifying. He's drumming on the table, talking about how limitations are what we're addicted to, ordering water after asking if the kale is prepared in the kitchen. He won't shut up. He tells Jessica, "I wish you'd shut up, though." Just kidding. When she tries to talk about herself, he interrupts to suggest she do the same detox treatment he did. She tries to politely end the date. He doesn't register the rejection. He just goes, "It's all good," and immediately moves on to hitting on another woman at the bar. Like Jessica was a video game level he failed, and he's just restarting. The woman at the bar is named Stacy. Morty delivers this absolutely unhinged pickup speech about wanting to please her, talking about getting promoted, fired, corner office, workplace accident. "I'm on my knees. Stacy." It's creepy, but delivered with such confidence that Stacy goes, "Okay, fuck it." They leave together. This is not a 4-year-old boy's personality. This is American Psycho, if Patrick Bateman started younger. Rick discovers that toxic Rick and Morty are alive and in pain, trapped in the containment unit. He feels responsible and wants to re-merge with them. Detoxed, Morty breaks Rick's phone to stop him from doing it. When Rick insists, Morty tells him, "Taking that away from me, that wouldn't be healthy," while laughing. There's nothing behind his eyes, just motivational speaker energy with zero actual emotion. The episode reveals what the machine considered toxic for Morty: his insecurity, his self-doubt, his irrational attachments, his neediness. Basically everything that made him care about other people's feelings. What's left is someone who views relationships as transactions, moves on from rejection instantly, and optimizes every interaction for personal gain. Within days, detoxed, Morty becomes a successful stockbroker, gets a fancy apartment, and dates a woman named Jacqueline who calls him the perfect man. He is perfect, perfectly hollow. Toxic Rick eventually tricks healthy Rick, escapes the containment unit, and tries to force them back together. They fight. Toxic Rick plans to use a machine to make the whole world toxic since he can't trap healthy Rick. Meanwhile, healthy Rick tries everything to get Morty to voluntarily remerge. Morty refuses and runs away to his stockbroker life. Rick has to track him down using Jessica as bait. Here's the key moment. Rick shoots Toxic Morty with a nanobotic virus that will kill him in 20 minutes unless Toxic Rick merges back with Healthy Rick to get the decryption key. Toxic Rick refuses. Rick keeps shooting Toxic Morty, cutting the time in half. Toxic Rick is furious but also concerned for Toxic Morty in a way that Healthy Rick is not concerned for Healthy Morty. Healthy Rick straight up says, "I had all my problems removed. My entitlement, my narcissism, my crippling loneliness, my irrational attachments." He shoots Toxic Morty 3 times without hesitation. Toxic Rick finally merges to save Toxic Morty. The toxic version cared more than the healthy version. Rick forcibly re-merges Morty using the same method. Detoxed Morty fights it the whole way, insisting he's fine. When he re-merges, he immediately becomes miserable again, back to his anxious, insecure self. Jacqueline points out that Morty was completely honest about being a 4-year-old boy from the Midwest who ran away and became a stockbroker with no conscience. Detoxed Morty was so removed from empathy, he told the truth about being a sociopath, and people thought he was being charmingly self-deprecating. The episode's message is brutal. Morty's weaknesses are actually his moral compass. His anxiety makes him consider consequences. His insecurity makes him care what people think. His neediness makes him value relationships. Remove those things, and you get someone who's successful, confident, and completely empty. A walking self-help book with no actual self inside. The show literally proved that Morty's best qualities are the ones he hates about himself. Rick merges with Toxic Rick and immediately starts acting like regular Rick, farting in Morty's face, being crude, overthinking things. The toxic parts aren't separate from who they are. They're essential to who they are. Without them, Rick and Morty become functional but fundamentally broken in different ways. Better to be a mess who cares than perfect and incapable of caring. The episode ends with Morty back at school, miserable but genuine. Jessica tells him, "Good to have you back." Because apparently everyone preferred anxious Morty over stockbroker Morty. Even his crush could tell something was fundamentally wrong with the improved version. That's how bad Detoxed Morty was. People missed the kid who could barely talk to them. Morty's upgrade turned him into a hollow stock market sociopath, and his next act of misguided compassion would be even more catastrophic. Morty tries to save an entire civilization because he feels bad about killing one snake. This goes exactly as well as you'd expect when a 4-year-old with empathy issues tries to fix something Rick explicitly told him to leave alone. Spoiler, it triggers a snake apocalypse, time travel war, and eventually gets the time police involved. Good job, Morty. Rattlestar Ricklactica starts with Morty getting bitten by a space snake during a routine tire change. Rick scans the snake's planet to make an anti-venom and discovers they're a complete mess. 19 billion snakes divided into 10,000 nations, all on the brink of war over race. Rick finds this hilarious. Imagine being a racist snake. "Hey, other snake, I hate you because you're the wrong color, snake." The snake Morty killed was their astronaut, their first contact, their version of Buzz Aldrin, except female, which Rick points out adds an extra layer of heartbreak. The snakes were this close to space exploration, and Morty accidentally murdered their hero with a hubcap. Morty immediately spirals. "I can't be the reason why 19 billion snakes lost all hope." Rick tries explaining that the species was doomed anyway. They were too divided, too violent, destined for the Dark Ages. That species was never getting beyond this stage. But Morty can't accept that sometimes bad things just happen and you move on. That would require emotional maturity. So instead, he goes to a pet store where he gets bitten again because apparently he's a slow learner, buys a snake, and secretly returns it to the snake planet as proof that their astronaut's mission succeeded. Here's where good intentions meet the plot of every time travel movie ever made. Morty thought he was giving the snakes hope. Classic hero move, very Spielberg. Instead, he gave them proof that something bigger and scarier exists in the universe, something they need to unite against. The snakes immediately stop fighting each other and dedicate all their resources to developing advanced technology. Not for exploration, for weaponization. Within what seems like days, they've invented time travel specifically to go back and kill the ape child who interfered with their timeline. That escalated quickly. Rick is furious in a way that suggests this has happened before. You gave them proof that there was something bigger and scarier to unite against, you little idiot. The snakes would have eventually recovered from losing their astronaut. Maybe it would have set them back a few generations, but they'd survive. Instead, Morty's intervention pushed them into developing universe-destroying, unthought-out technology, like time travel, before they were ready for it. because Morty couldn't let a dead snake be dead, even after it bit his ankle. Twice, technically. The episode becomes Terminator, but with snakes. Snake Terminators arrive from the future, trying to kill Morty. They literally say, "Target acquired," while hunting him. Rick and Morty have to infiltrate Snake Earth in the future, which has become a post-apocalyptic Skynet situation where machines hunt snakes. A narrator explains that 17 billion snake lives ended on the 21st of June 2026 because of the timeline Morty created. The survivors live in constant warfare between snake and machine, all because Morty felt guilty about an accident and decided to play God without a permit. Rick's solution is beautifully cynical, and also kind of genius. He can't undo what Morty did. The snakes already have time travel, and they're pissed. So instead of fighting it, he gives them the technology even earlier. In 1985 Snake Time. This ensures they'll develop time travel so prematurely that they'll destroy themselves with it before it ever involves Morty. We're removing ourselves from this sloppy, fucked up story and letting snake time travel eat its own tail. Meta commentary about time travel plots delivered while inside a time travel plot. Very Rick. The snakes immediately start fucking up their timeline in increasingly stupid ways. One snake goes back to save Snake Abraham Lincoln from assassination, Snake Ford's Theater, Snake John Wilkes Booth, the whole bit. This accidentally creates a fascist timeline. The student who did it realizes his mistake, knocks out his professor, and grabs a chainsaw to fix things. Other snakes try to assassinate Snake Hitler in the shower. Multiple snakes show up to both protect and kill Snake Hitler simultaneously. Soon, Snake Berlin is filled with time-traveling snakes from different timelines, all trying to fix each other's fixes. It's like if Back to the Future Part 2 was written by snakes who failed ethics class. Then the time police show up. 2 cops, just 2 regular cops, whose entire job is stopping civilizations from fucking with time. They show up, beat the snakes with nightsticks while screaming, "Don't fuck with time," and "You don't fuck with time," and that's it. The snakes' entire civilization collapses because they got time travel before they were mature enough to handle it. The time police are basically the universe's Hoei for temporal mechanics, and they do not mess around. The episode ends with Rick claiming this counts as one of Morty's adventures, which means he doesn't get a freebie. Morty wanted to go to Boob World. Now he can't because he fucked up and needs to learn a lesson. That's Rick's idea of pedagogy, letting your grandson trigger an extinction level event and then charging him for it. What makes this episode fascinating for understanding Morty is that his motivation is completely pure. He genuinely feels terrible about killing the snake astronaut. He wants to restore hope to a species that lost their hero. His empathy is real, his intentions are spotless, and he still manages to cause more damage than most cartoon villains accomplish on purpose. That's kind of impressive in a horrifying way. Morty's fundamental flaw is that he can't accept bad outcomes. When Jessica doesn't like him, he detoxifies himself into a sociopath. When he accidentally kills the lighthouse keeper, he pushes him down the stairs on purpose. Wait, that doesn't sound right, but it happened. When a snake dies, he tries to resurrect hope for an entire civilization using a pet store purchase. He's constantly trying to fix things that maybe don't need fixing, or that he's definitely not qualified to fix. His empathy is what makes him good, but it's attached to the judgment of a teenager with access to reality-breaking technology. That's a dangerous combination. Rick explicitly tells Morty to stay in the car multiple times. Morty ignores him and gets bitten. Rick tells Morty to leave the dead snake alone. Morty returns with a living one from Petco or wherever. Rick tries to remove them from the timeline mess. Morty keeps asking questions and feeling guilty. At every step, Morty's compassion overrides his judgment, and billions of beings suffer for it. The episode's brutal lesson: sometimes trying to help makes everything worse. Morty's kindness toward one dead snake triggered a timeline war that killed 17 billion snakes and required time police intervention. His inability to accept that bad things happen, that a snake died, that a species might fail, that he's not responsible for fixing everything, makes him dangerous in ways that actual evil never could. Evil people know they're causing harm and can be stopped. Morty causes harm while trying to help, which means he never sees it coming and never learns to quit. The show literally animated Snake Abraham Lincoln dodging assassination and Snake Hitler getting attacked in the shower, just to demonstrate how badly Morty screwed up. That's commitment to a bit. Now moving on to our next episode. Morty and Summer accidentally commit deicide while high, not as a plan, not on purpose. They got intoxicated, tried to pilot a spaceship they didn't understand, panicked, and crashed into God hard enough to kill him. Then they lied about it. This is peak Morty energy, catastrophic consequences from good intentions mixed with terrible judgment. Children of Mort starts with the family on a camping trip that gets interrupted when Rick receives a message saying he got someone pregnant. Beth forces him to take responsibility. They portal to the location and discover Rick didn't impregnate a person, he impregnated a planet. "I fucked a planet," Rick announces, like this is a normal Tuesday. The planet, Gaia, is giving birth to a civilization of clay people. Rick insists they're not his kids. Spoiler, they're not. They're God's kids. Well, a god. Specifically, a Zeus-type deity who shows up later. Beth decides to help raise the civilization anyway, dragging Rick into building an entire society from scratch using steampunk machinery and population management tubes. They're literally sorting people into jobs, recycling unproductives, DJs, foodies, influencers through the system, and building a generation ship. Meanwhile, Jerry takes Summer and Morty camping nearby. Summer roasts Jerry so hard he wanders off into the woods, gets kidnapped by the unproductive clay people, and becomes their camping cult leader. Classic Jerry arc. Summer and Morty, bored and abandoned, decide to check out the spaceship Beth and Rick built. This is where things go sideways. They find tubes containing the civilization's collective knowledge, basically a library you can smoke. Summer, demonstrating the critical thinking skills that got her a B- in chemistry, looks at these tubes and goes, "This looks just like Trisha's bong." Morty agrees the controls look like video game controllers. These are not good observations to make before operating alien technology. They inhale the knowledge tubes, both of them. They get absolutely destroyed. Not giggly high, I got scared straight high. Summer later says she doesn't ever want to be high again. They're completely incapacitated by what Rick later identifies as a K-Zax array, which he describes as basically smoking the ring. Most pilots die after 3 days of exposure. Summer and Morty just huffed it for fun because they were bored. While extremely intoxicated and unable to think clearly, they decide to pilot the spaceship. Because of course they do. They're high teenagers who think they understand technology because one looks like a bong and the other looks like an Xbox controller. Morty actually says, "I think we got this, bro," before attempting to fly a generation ship while his brain is melting. Outside, Rick and God are having a literal God fight over who gets to raise the clay civilization. God is winning. He's the size of 4 Empire State Buildings and has actual divine powers. Rick is getting his ass kicked. Then Summer and Morty, panicking in the spaceship and completely unable to control it, crash directly into God's head at high speed. They kill him instantly. A god. Dead. Vehicular god slaughter. Rick saves them, pulls them out of the wreckage, and they immediately start apologizing. "We played video games and got high. We did wrong. We did wrong." They're having a full confession moment, expecting punishment. Rick, being Rick, tells them getting high and playing video games is great, and he'll never sell them out. He's lying. He absolutely sells them out later. At the end of the episode, when Jerry is bragging about his camping wisdom and parenting, Rick drops the truth bomb. "Your kids got high on alien mist and drove the ship into that Zeus guy's head. Basically murdered him." Beth and Jerry are horrified. Rick continues, "Did you know Summer huffed a K-Zax array? She basically smoked the ring. Most pilots die after 3 days. And Morty, the fucking moron, he thought the ship worked like a game controller. What in the Disney Channel fuck is that?" So let's break down Morty's role in this disaster. He got bored, wandered into a spaceship he shouldn't touch, and actively decided to inhale unknown alien substances. After getting so high he couldn't function, he decided to pilot a generation ship while completely incapacitated. When he couldn't control it, he panicked and accidentally killed a deity. Then he lied to his parents about it, and only confessed when Rick sold him out. This is the Morty pattern in a nutshell. Catastrophically bad decisions, massive harm, desperate cover-up, guilt only after consequences hit. This is the Morty pattern in a nutshell. He makes catastrophically bad decisions, causes massive harm, then tries to hide it. The harm isn't intentional. He wasn't trying to kill God. But the recklessness is inexcusable. He's a teenager with access to universe-breaking technology who thinks, looks like a game controller, is sufficient qualification to pilot a spaceship while extremely high. What makes this perfect for understanding Morty's character is the complete absence of malice. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. He's just bored, impulsive, and profoundly lacking in judgment. When given any freedom from Rick's supervision, Morty immediately makes the worst possible choices. Not evil choices, stupid choices. He sees mysterious tubes and thinks, let's smoke that. He sees a spaceship and thinks, I can fly this high. These aren't the decisions of someone trying to cause harm. They're the decisions of someone who fundamentally doesn't understand consequences. Rick's assessment is brutal but accurate. Morty is a moron who thought spaceship controls work like video games. That's a fundamental failure to understand that real life has real stakes. The fact that Morty survived years of adventures with Rick and still hasn't learned to not get high and pilot unknown spacecraft means he's not learning from experience. He's just accumulating trauma and poor coping mechanisms. The episode also reveals something important. When Morty thinks he's about to die, his instinct is to confess and apologize. He has a conscience. He feels guilty. He knows what he did was wrong. But that guilt only shows up after the consequences hit. Before that, he's perfectly happy to huff alien knowledge and joyride in a generation ship. His morality is reactive, not proactive. He'll feel bad about killing God, but not bad enough to avoid doing stupid things that might kill gods. This is Morty at 5/10, capable of massive harm, not through malice but through being dangerously irresponsible with access to cosmic power. He's just the universe's worst combination of good intentions and terrible judgment, wrapped in a package that can accidentally commit deicide on a Tuesday. Now let's move on to our last episode for Morty. Morty steals a death crystal that shows him dying old with Jessica, then proceeds to murder dozens of people to stay on that timeline. Not in a, whoops, accidents happen way. In a, I will bulldoze through reality itself to get my romantic ending way. He kills cops, fascists, bullies, and bystanders while the crystal guides every decision. This is Morty at his most dangerous, convinced he's the hero of a love story while leaving a body count that would make an action movie blush. Edge of Morty, Rick Die Rick Pete, starts with Rick taking Morty to collect death crystals from Forbodulon Prime. Death crystals show you how you're going to die based on your current path. Rick explains that anyone who knows how they're definitely going to die is either boring as hell or about to get shit-faced. He uses them tactically, checking which futures lead to certain death so he knows when. Enemies are reloading. Very Rick. Very practical. Very, I don't use these to plan my life because I'm not a loser. Morty steals one. He looks into it and sees himself dying old with Jessica, saying, I love you, Morty. That's it. That's all he needs. His entire worldview narrows to a single goal: die old with Jessica. Everything else becomes irrelevant. The crystal shows him branching futures. Every decision creates new timelines. As long as he follows the paths that lead to dying with Jessica, he'll get his happy ending. This is like using a GPS, except the destination is old age with crush, and the route goes through mass murder. The problems start immediately. Morty's driving the spaceship but refuses to go up into space because the crystal is telling him to drive toward Earth. Rick demands the wheel. Morty refuses. They struggle. Rick gets impaled through the chest by debris and dies. Morty's first victim is his own grandfather, killed because Morty wouldn't deviate from the crystal's path for 5 seconds. Rick's dying words are, I love you, Morty. Then his hologram backup activates and starts criticizing Morty's holophobic language while trying to get him to clone Rick. Morty ignores all of this because the crystal says, keep moving. Back at school, Morty's walking through the hallways with absolute confidence because the crystal is showing him he won't die here. A bully threatens to kill him. Morty casually says the bully won't. I have it on good authority. The bully attacks. Morty touches him. The bully explodes into ash. Turns out, following the death crystal gave Morty an Akira-style death touch. Anyone he makes contact with dies instantly and disintegrates. This is never explained. It's just a side effect of being so locked into one specific future that he's become incompatible with everyone else's existence. Morty doesn't stop. He keeps following the crystal. More people die. The bully's friends attack. More ash piles. The crystal guides him through scenarios where he has to kill to survive, and Morty follows obediently. He's a puppet on destiny's strings, and the strings are soaked in blood. The body count escalates. Cops show up. Morty summons Mr. Meeseeks. Shield me from the law. The Meeseeks tries to protect Morty and gets killed by police. More cops die from Morty's death touch. The situation spirals into a full military response. News coverage shows an unstoppable science fiction boy attacking our nation's final line of defense. Morty just keeps walking, killing anyone who gets close, because the crystal says this is the path to Jessica. There's a trial. Morty's lawyer argues self-defense for turning 43 men into piles of ash. The judge is about to sentence him when Morty starts speaking in fragmented, stuttering speech. He's not actually talking. The crystal is feeding him words that will get him acquitted. He says things like, I will always remember our time in Peru to the judge, which happens to be her dead husband's last words. She breaks down crying and dismisses the case. Morty literally weaponized a widow's grief by letting a magic rock control his speech to manipulate her emotions. That's sociopathic puppet theater. The public turns on him, then immediately forgives him after he makes some tones and frequencies come out of his mouth that make everyone go, actually, never mind, he's fine. The crystal is guiding him through social manipulation like it's guiding him through murder. Whatever keeps him on the path to Jessica works. Jessica shows up and invites him skinny dipping. This is it. This is the moment. Except the crystal shows him that's not the right path. If he goes with her now, he won't die old with her. So Morty refuses. He tells her, "We maybe get together in our 40s?" Jessica leaves, confused and kind of creeped out. Morty just keeps moving in ways that lead to dying with you. He's so obsessed with the perfect ending that he's sabotaging actual chances at happiness. Meanwhile, every time Rick tries to clone himself back, he ends up in a fascist universe, or a WASP universe, because Morty stole his clone, and the backups keep rerouting to alternate realities. Rick's clones keep getting killed by Nazi Mortys and WASP families, while Morty continues his murder spree on Earth. The contrast is darkly funny. Rick's desperately trying to resurrect while Morty's casually committing mass murder to maintain his timeline. Eventually, hologram Rick gains mass through ferrofluid and becomes a fucking god. With the ability to interact with matter, he's ecstatic because he was tired of being incorporeal. He immediately tries to kill Morty. Rick's actual body finally makes it back and has to save Morty from his own homicidal hologram. The death crystal shatters. Morty's death touch disappears. He can't see his future anymore. What makes this episode fascinating is watching Morty transform into something genuinely frightening. He doesn't enjoy killing. There's no sadism here. But he's willing to kill without hesitation if the crystal shows it serves his goal. The crystal showed him a future where he's happy, and he decided that future was worth any cost. Dozens of lives, his grandfather's life, his own humanity, all acceptable losses for the possibility of dying old with his high school crush. The episode's structure is brilliant. Every death Morty causes is framed as necessary, guided by fate, inevitable. The crystal removes moral agency. Morty's just following instructions from a magic rock, except he chose to follow those instructions. He chose to steal the crystal. He chose to prioritize his fantasy future over everyone's actual present. The crystal didn't make him a killer, it just gave him permission to become one. When the crystal breaks, Morty panics. "I can't see my own death. How am I gonna die?" Rick tells him, "You don't get to know how you're gonna die." Morty's been using the crystal as a crutch to avoid making real choices. Without it, he's just a kid who killed dozens of people for a girl who barely knows he exists. The realization should be devastating. Instead, the episode ends with vague lessons about thinking ahead and living in the moment, and everyone forgiving Morty, because apparently mass murder is fine if you learned something. Morty apologizes for trying to kill the whole world and stuff, like it's a minor mistake. The family accepts this instantly. Nobody addresses that Morty was perfectly willing to sacrifice everyone and everything for a fantasy. Nobody talks about the 43 people he turned to ash. The show just hits reset and moves on, which is almost more disturbing than the murders themselves. The implication that this level of carnage is just another Tuesday in Morty's life. Now Morty gets 5/10 because he's no longer the innocent kid from season 1 who threw up at violence and begged Rick to do the right thing. That Morty died somewhere around the third purge, or maybe the second decoy massacre. This Morty has a genuine capacity for brutal violence, and sometimes enjoys it. The Purge episode proved he'll gleefully execute people while laughing and shooting corpses for fun. The Detox episode showed that without his anxieties and insecurities, he transforms into a manipulative sociopath who treats women like Pokemon cards and relationships like business transactions. The Death Crystal episode demonstrated he'll murder dozens of people, including cops, bystanders, and his own grandfather, to achieve his goals when he's convinced the ends justify the means. What this rating means is Morty's walked through too much blood to claim innocence anymore. His toxic traits, the anxiety, the self-doubt, the neediness that Rick mocks constantly, are actually his moral compass. Remove those and you get American Psycho Jr. working at a stock brokerage. The detox machine literally proved that Morty's weaknesses are what keep him good. His insecurity makes him consider other people's feelings. His anxiety makes him think about consequences. Strip those away, and he's got zero empathy, maximum confidence, and a talent for manipulation that would make a cult leader jealous. But here's why Morty stays at 5/10 instead of climbing higher. His evil is reactive and circumstantial. The purge violence happened because Rick gave him permission, and the chemical purginol amplified his rage. even though Rick lied about that part. The sociopathy required artificially removing his conscience. The Death Crystal murders happened because he was obsessed with a fantasy future and had a magic rock telling him murder was okay. Morty doesn't wake up choosing violence. Violence happens when he's triggered, traumatized, or given external justification. His baseline, when he's just regular Morty, without cosmic interference, remains protective and even heroic. He tried to save the snake because he felt guilty. He tried to help the clay people by getting high and crashing a spaceship into God, which admittedly worked out terribly, but the intention was helping his family. When Rick abandons situations, Morty tries to fix them. When people are in danger, Morty's instinct is to save them, even when it backfires catastrophically. He's wired for empathy that occasionally mutates into world-destroying decisions. The 5/10 captures that Morty is dangerous but still reachable. Rick is dangerous because he's nihilistic and doesn't care. Morty is dangerous because he cares too much in all the wrong ways about all the wrong things. He'll kill for love, he'll destroy civilizations from guilt, he'll commit deicide while high. But he won't kill for fun unless chemicals or permission structures unlock that part of him. His evil requires triggering conditions, trauma, obsession, external manipulation, or removing his moral safeguards. Without those triggers, he defaults back to the anxious kid trying to do right and mostly failing. What makes Morty tragic instead of just evil is watching him get darker season by season. Early Morty threw up when Rick killed people. Current Morty has a body count in the hundreds and barely blinks. Early Morty begged Rick not to abandon planets. Current Morty will abandon planets himself if the crystal says to. The show keeps traumatizing him, giving him access to reality-breaking technology, and expecting him not to break. He's breaking, slowly, measurably, but he's still fighting it, which is what separates him from Rick fundamentally. Rick embraced being a monster. Morty's still trying to be good while occasionally murdering his way through the universe. That's just being 5/10 instead of 8/10. He's not a good person anymore, but he's trying to be, which counts for something. Not much, but something. The real question is, how many more seasons until that number climbs higher and the trying stops altogether? Now, let's find how evil Summer is, but remember to subscribe to our channel if you want more videos like these. Summer evolved from annoyed teen to Rick's adventure partner, which means she's been infected by his worldview without the benefit of Rick's genius to back it up. She's got her grandfather's confidence without his competence, her mother's narcissism without the veterinary degree, and surprisingly, more emotional intelligence than the rest of the family combined. That's not saying much when your competition is Rick. I turned myself into a pickle to avoid therapy. Sanchez and Jerry, please validate my existence, Smith, but still. What makes Summer interesting is she's aware enough to see the family's dysfunction, but young enough to still think she can fix it or escape it. Early Summer just wanted to be popular and have her parents stop embarrassing her. Current Summer has traveled through dimensions, watched civilizations collapse, and developed the kind of existential detachment that usually requires a philosophy degree and student debt. She went from, ugh, my family sucks, to the universe is meaningless, but I'm going to keep my eyeliner sharp anyway in about 4 seasons. The question with Summer isn't whether she's good or evil. She's 17, so she's mostly just chaos in human form. The question is whether she's the family's hope, or just another Smith waiting to crack. She calls out Rick's lies more than anyone else. She genuinely cares about Morty, even when she's roasting him. She's capable of empathy, strategy, and occasionally learning from mistakes. But she's also absolutely willing to endanger reality itself for social status, manipulate people for personal gain, and embrace Rick's nihilism when it's convenient. Summer's the most balanced family member, which is terrifying because that bar is underground. She's what happens when you give a teenager access to infinite universes and expect them not to develop a god complex. Sometimes she uses that power responsibly. Sometimes she uses it to throw parties that break dimensional barriers. We're examining which version wins. Summer tries to throw a house party for social clout and accidentally helps teleport the house to an alien dimension where testicle monsters live. This is what happens when my parents are out of town meets my grandpa has access to infinite realities. Spoiler, reality loses. Rixie Business is the season 1 finale, which means it's still early enough that the family has consequences and late enough that Rick has alien friends. Beth and Jerry leave for a Titanic-themed getaway, because apparently reliving maritime disasters is romantic. Beth puts Rick in charge with explicit threats. Any damage to this house or these children when we get back, and no more adventures with Morty. Rick agrees. This will go great. The second the parents leave, Summer announces she's having a party. Rick announces he's having a party. Morty's just trying to keep everyone from getting grounded. Summer's motivation is crystal clear. She wants to gain some footing with the cool kids. She wants social capital. That's teenage priorities in a nutshell. Destroy your house, ruin your relationship with your family, risk cosmic consequences. Also, Brad and his friends might acknowledge your existence. Rick's party brings aliens. Lots of aliens. Bird Person shows up, Squanchy shows up, and immediately starts squanching in Rick's closet, which turns out to be autoerotic asphyxiation. Gearhead shows up to bore everyone about the Gear Wars. Aberdolf Linkler, Rick's failed attempt to create a morally neutral superleader by combining Hitler and Lincoln's DNA, crashes through a wall, looking for revenge. The house fills with interdimensional beings doing interdimensional drugs, while Summer's trying to impress teenagers with Jell-O shots. Things escalate when Morty accidentally knocks over a device that teleports the entire house to an alien dimension. Everyone's suddenly surrounded by giant testicle monsters that grab people and stuff them into holes. A guy runs outside excited, gets grabbed immediately, and disappears into a monster's genitals. Everyone freezes. Rick, being Rick, just turns on music and yells, "Let's party." Everyone goes back to dancing because apparently near-death experiences are just mood lighting at Rick's parties. Here's where Summer's priorities become clear. The house is in another dimension. They're surrounded by hostile alien life forms. Morty's panicking about how their parents will kill them. Summer's response? "I swear to God, Morty, if it weren't for the fact that everyone's still having a blast in there, I would be so furious with you right now." She's worried about her party's vibe. The house could be actively dissolving, and she'd be fine, as long as people were still having fun. Rick sends Morty to collect crystals to get them home. Morty takes Aberdolf Linkler and Nancy Summers' band geek friend that Summer's been ignoring. Linkler sacrifices himself fighting a monster so they can get the crystals. Morty comes back with a tearful speech about how Linkler died heroically and loved Rick like a father. Rick's response? He cuts up the crystals and snorts them. They were space cocaine the whole time. Rick could have gotten them home whenever he wanted. He just wanted drugs and used Linkler's death as an excuse to party harder. The party ends with everyone abandoning Summer. Squanchy invites people to continue partying at his place. Summer tries to come. Squanchy tells her she's not squanchy enough, and that Nancy told us what a bitch you are. Nancy, the friend Summer ignored and sent on a dangerous mission just to get her away from the cool kids, calls Summer out. "You're a bad person. All you care about is having popular people like you." Summer gets socially destroyed by the band geek she tried to use and discard. What happens next is actually interesting. The house is trashed. Rick passes out on the couch. Summer could keep trying to fix her social status or chase after the party. Instead, she stays and helps clean. When Morty starts panicking about their parents coming home, Rick gives them a device that freezes time. The episode ends with a montage of Rick, Morty, and Summer fixing everything together, painting walls, carving pumpkins, stealing TVs from Best Buy, watching Titanic and calling it the worst movie ever, together. Summer doesn't try to dodge responsibility. She doesn't blame Rick or Morty. She just works to fix what got broken, even though most of it wasn't directly her fault. When Rick says his new catchphrase is, "I love my grandkids," she hugs him. When he immediately follows with, "Psych, just kidding. My new catchphrase is, I don't give a fuck," she laughs and dances anyway. She's learned something about Rick, about herself, about the fact that social status means nothing when you're cleaning alien vomit out of interdimensional carpets. This episode establishes Summer's pattern. She'll absolutely endanger everything for shallow reasons, but when consequences hit, she doesn't run. She owns it and tries to fix it. That's more maturity than Jerry's shown in 8 seasons. It's also more accountability than Rick's capable of. Summer's not good. She threw a party that could have killed everyone, but she's not irredeemable either. She's just 17, and learning that impressing Brad isn't worth teleporting your house to testicle monster dimension. Summer's wild house party showed how shallow motives can spiral into interdimensional chaos, and her next misadventure would prove just how quickly power can corrupt when she's handed the throne. Summer visits a planet run by women, and speedruns becoming a tyrant in under 10 minutes. She goes from equal rights advocate to calling her grandfather a slave, faster than you can say, power corrupts. This is basically what would happen if you gave a teenage girl the keys to Themyscira, but made it way more uncomfortable and less Wonder Woman-y. Raising Gazorpazorp kicks off with Morty accidentally getting a sex robot pregnant, which is happening back on Earth while Summer tags along with Rick to the robot's home planet. They arrive on Gazorpazorp, which looks like someone asked Mad Max to design a planet but only gave him the budget for rocks and screaming. Primitive alien dudes are fighting each other over sex robots using sticks and pure aggression. Rick drops the lore. Gazorpazorp used to be advanced, then they replaced women with birthing machines, which let men focus entirely on war, so they bombed themselves back to the Stone Age. Very efficient problem solving, guys. Now they just fight over robots all day like it's Black Friday at a dystopian Best Buy. Summer gets grabbed by one of these cavemen. Rick saves her but immediately hits her with, "Still think it's a good idea to go through holes without a wiener." Summer wants to go home. Then they get teleported upward to the real Gazorpazorp, AT, a floating tech paradise where women live in luxury, while men fight over robots in the dirt below. The women separated from men during the Great Passive Aggression because male Gazorpians kept starting wars. The setup is basically Elysium meets The Handmaid's Tale, except the genders are flipped and everyone's an alien. The women built Utopia, dispense sex robots to maintain population, raise female babies in their society, and yeet male babies down to Mad Max land the second they're born. Here's where Summer becomes the villain of her own story. The Gazorpian women see Rick and immediately assume he's Summer's slave, because obviously men are property here. Summer has a choice: correct them and explain Earth has gender equality, or embrace her new position of power. She picks option 2 in about 0.3 seconds. He's my slave. He's definitely my slave. Rick nearly gets executed for being a rogue male, and Summer just lets it happen because she's too busy enjoying her promotion to oppressor. She's known these women for the length of a TikTok video, and already she's willing to sacrifice Rick to the cause of feeling important. Marsha, the ruler, gives Summer the grand tour while Rick's choking in the background. The women explain their paradise. They eliminated conflict, built amazing tech, created a society where women discover a service that fulfills them most. It's a LinkedIn recruiter's wet dream, except it's built on biological segregation and child abandonment. Summer doesn't question any of this. She's too busy bonding with Marsha over fashion. "I love your top. I love your top. I'm here if you need to talk." They're doing the women supporting women thing while literally oppressing half their species. But sure, cute tops matter more. Rick tries to leave because they need to warn Earth about Morty Jr. becoming a murder machine. Summer tells him, "You are insulting them." Rick says, "This place sucks." Summer fires back with, "Well, it really doesn't matter what you want, because this is a sane place where women rule." She's been there for maybe the runtime of a commercial break, and already she's fully radicalized. That's character development on fast forward. Any speedrunners in chat? Rick responds by farting. Mature. The Gazorpian women lose their minds because apparently they don't speak of the sound. It reminds them of men, and therefore must be erased from reality. Very healthy coping mechanism. Summer accidentally reveals Rick is her grandpa, blowing their cover. The women move to execute them for being from a planet dominated by men. Summer could de-escalate. Instead, she picks this exact moment, while they're about to be crushed by a boulder, to deliver her feminist talking points. Equals? We make 70% of your salary for the same job. Girl, read the room. You're about to die. Save the wage gap statistics for when you're not facing capital punishment. The Gazorpians sentence them to death. Rick apologizes. Summer looks at her Marc Jacobs top and has an epiphany. She makes a whole speech about how Earthmen aren't all bad because some are gay, which is why her clothes are better than theirs. It's like if Project Runway saved your life. She argues that imposing gender separation on Earth would be oppressive, just like the system the women claim to have escaped from. "If you think my top is cute, you cannot execute." The women agree and let them leave. Fashion saves the day. Marc Jacobs for president. What makes this episode fascinating is watching Summer any percent speedrun through fascism and back. She sees a society that validates her, immediately embraces it without ethics checks, treats Rick like garbage because the power structure permits it, then uses the exact same critical thinking that got her in trouble to escape. She's capable of casual cruelty when it serves her ego. She'll buy into supremacist ideology if it makes her feel special. But she's also smart enough to recognize systemic flaws once the validation high wears off, and she remembers she values fashion more than fascism. Rick's final assessment is brutal. Any epiphanies about gender politics were just projection of your feminine insecurity. He offers her a pink spaceship as a consolation prize. Summer doesn't argue because she knows he's partially right. She got swept up in feeling important and almost got them both executed for it. The lesson? Supremacy is bad regardless of who's running it, and Summer learned this by briefly becoming the oppressor. That's harder education than most people get at 17, even if the tuition was almost death by boulder. The show literally gave Summer a feminist awakening via gay fashion designers and execution by crushing. That's some creative writing right there. Summer's brief reign on Gazorpazorp showed how power can warp her judgment, but her next crisis would prove that fear can do it even faster. Summer joins a doomsday cult and tries to sacrifice her parents to giant floating heads within 24 hours of meeting them. This is basically Jonestown speedrun any %, except instead of Kool-Aid, it's homemade ice cream and balloon-based human sacrifice. When the apocalypse hits, Summer's response is, "Have you considered joining an MLM, but make it religious?" Get Swifty opens with a giant yellow head flying through space toward Earth like the world's worst Zoom call. It immediately starts destroying the planet with climate disasters. A golfer thinks, "Hey, golf is easy now," before falling into a sinkhole screaming, "Golf is hard again." The head demands, "Show me what you got," in a voice that triggers earthquakes. Very American Idol meets Extinction Event. Rick immediately puts on sunglasses and announces they're going to the Pentagon. Not the Pentagon, the lame one here on Earth. Man's got Pentagon preferences, like some people have Starbucks orders. Back at the house, everyone's losing it. Summer asks if it's God and whether that gets them out of school. Solid priorities. Mr. Goldenfold shows up on a moped recruiting for church because apparently when giant heads control the weather, prayer becomes the logical play. Beth's skeptical. Jerry thinks Summer should be allowed to believe whatever she wants. This family dynamic is why therapy exists. Rick and Morty head to Area 51, where Rick explains the heads are cromulons, aliens, who feed on talent and showmanship from less evolved life forms. Earth needs to perform an original song or get disintegrated. The president tries calling Pharrell, Randy Newman, Billy Corgan, and The Dream. They're all dead. Everyone died at the Grammys during an earthquake. The show literally killed every famous musician except Ice-T in one sentence. That's efficiency. So Rick improvises Get Swifty, a song about taking off your pants and defecating on the floor. The president watches this performance and goes, "It's our world's best effort. That's what." Imagine being the leader of the free world, and your Hail Mary is a song called Get Swifty that includes the lyric, "I'm Mr. Bulldops." The Cromulons love it. Earth survives round 1. Then Earth gets teleported to another galaxy for Planet Music, our reality show, where 5 planets compete and losers get plasma rayed into non-existence. The Cromulons literally run a talent show where elimination means planetary genocide. Simon Cowell could never. While Rick and Morty are at Area 51, Principal Vagina starts a new religion. The pitch is basically, the old gods are dead, fuck all previous religions, worship the giant head that literally controls the weather. He walks outside, drops to his knees on the sidewalk, and pledges his eternal soul to the heads. It's the most logical theological argument anyone's made. Better reasoning than most prosperity gospel preachers, honestly. Summer watches this and goes, "Yeah, that tracks." Within hours, Summer's fully converted to headism. She's wearing the head hat, attending festivals, calling Jerry father instead of dad, and apologizing to the cranial creator when she uses mildly disrespectful language. When Jerry asks what the ascension is, they show him 3 people tied to balloons labeled Thief, Goth, and Movie Talker getting released into the sky. Principal Vagina explains they're sending unwantables up to be inhaled and sneezed back as better babies. Summer's ecstatic about this. Oh yes, rise to the giant head. You are free to be free. Girl discovered ritual sacrifice and made it her aesthetic before anyone could say this seems unhealthy. Summer starts obsessively making dinner every night. She serves exactly 12 tacos because the head desires it. When she accidentally calls Jerry silly, she drops to her knees and begs forgiveness from the heavenly head and cranial creator for her transgressions. Beth and Jerry are initially thrilled because Summer's respectful, acing potato class, not getting pregnant or doing drugs. They're so focused on the behavior improvement, they ignore that she's speedrunning radicalization. Vary the Stepford Wives, but make it apocalyptic. Then Beth and Jerry have a parenting epiphany. They realize Summer's respect isn't real. She's brainwashed. Principal Vagina offers them dream jobs. Nor. Jerry is head of advertising. Beth promoted straight to head of medicine. Beth refuses. We've been waiting 16 years for our daughter to respect us, but it has to be our daughter, not this person she's become. Jerry backs her up. They choose their actual daughter over cult-improved daughter. Finally, decent parenting from these two. Character growth speedrun. Summer's response to her parents trying to save her? She ties them to balloons for ritual sacrifice. Beth and Jerry are about to be sent skyward as unwantables because they questioned the heads. Jerry's panicking. I stole a paperclip and I have it in my cheek, but I don't know what to do with it, and it hurts. Summer's tying more balloons. You're going to be okay. You will come back as babies. She genuinely believes she's helping by murdering her parents via balloon ascension. That's somehow worse than malicious murder. At least malicious murder knows what it's doing. Principal Vagina is about to cut the rope when the Cromulons start reacting to Rick's terrible second song. Then Morty shows up. They perform Head Bent Over, Raised Up Posterior, and Earth Wins Planet music after 988 seasons. The Cromulons leave. Everyone realizes the heads just wanted entertainment and none of the cult stuff mattered. Mr. Goldenfold goes, "Did he just say musical reality show?" Jerry admits, "Yeah, it's possible we may have been correlating some things that weren't actually related at all." Principal Vagina floats by screaming for help because the mob turned on him. Cult dissolution any percent. What makes this episode perfect for understanding Summer is watching fear obliterate her critical thinking in real time. She didn't join headism because Principal Vagina was particularly convincing. His entire theology was, the head controls the weather, therefore worship it. She joined because giant heads were destroying Earth, and authority figures offered certainty during chaos. Within 24 hours, she went from skeptical teenager to attempting parental sacrifice via balloon transportation. That's what happens when teenage insecurity meets existential dread and a charismatic leader, which is basically how most cults work. Summer's capable of genuine harm when she's scared, and someone gives her simple answers. Give her a crisis, an authority figure, and a framework that makes her feel important, and she'll tie her own parents to balloons without questioning the ethics. But she genuinely believes they'll come back as babies. The road to balloon-based murder is paved with good intentions and homemade ice cream. The show literally had its teenage character attempt ritual sacrifice in a subplot, while the main plot was Rick performing a song about raised posteriors. The tonal whiplash is the point. Also, the episode ends with Ice-T returning to his home planet of Alphabetrium, where he's revealed to be a sentient letter who got exiled for not caring about anything. He transforms into Water Tea and fights the Numbercons. The post-credits scene has absolutely nothing to do with Summer's cult arc. That's just bonus lore about Ice-T being from the alphabet dimension. Why? Because this show can. Summer's balloon sacrifice phase proved how fear can override her judgment, but her next chapter would show what happens when pain turns that fear into violence. Summer copes with her parents' divorce by escaping to a Mad Max planet where she brutally murders people, marries a cannibal warlord named Hemorrhage, and lives in a hut for 3 weeks. This is basically Eat, Pray, Love, except instead of Italy, it's the apocalypse, and instead of finding herself, she finds creative ways to shoot people in the face. Therapy? Never heard of her. Rickmancing the Stone opens immediately post-divorce with Jerry awkwardly trying to say goodbye to the kids in the driveway. Summer's response is asking Rick if he needs her help on an adventure. Immediately somewhere else, I don't care, even if it might kill us. That's a red billboard with fireworks. Rick's answer is perfect. I did not. But if you're really that alienated, I'm as willing to exploit it as the next guy. Church, army, or Olympic gymnastics trainer. Man just compared himself to institutions known for exploiting vulnerable youth and thought that was a selling point. They portal to a post-apocalyptic wasteland where everyone has mohawks and drives cars held together with duct tape and hope. Rick's there to collect isotope 322. Summer's there to not think about her feelings. They immediately get into a car chase with the Deathstalkers, a gang of wasteland warriors who eat people and worship a glowing green rock. When a guy jumps on their car with a knife, Summer doesn't panic. She grabs Rick's flask, chugs some alcohol, spits it into the engine as fuel, and screams, "I fucking love post-apocalyptic versions of Earth." Girl found her coping mechanism, and it's vehicular manslaughter. When they pull over to collect isotope samples, more Deathstalkers attack. A massive guy called Colossus charges at Summer. She shoots out his tire, flips his car, and when he crawls out, begging, "Kill me, please," Summer goes, "Okay, but not because you told me to," and executes him. Then she puts one foot on his corpse like she's posing for an album cover. Morty's horrified. Rick's impressed. Okay, getting darker. That's the understatement of the century. The Deathstalkers' leader, Hemorrhage, shows up, and instead of fighting, offers to let them join the gang. Summer immediately agrees. Rick decides to stay because there's a 20-pound boulder of isotope 322 at their camp, and he wants it. So, Rick's using Summer's divorce trauma as cover for a heist, and Summer's using Rick's heist as cover for her divorce trauma. Healthy family dynamics all around. Summer goes full Wasteland warrior. She joins hunting parties to what used to be Seattle to hunt what used to be people. She's killing mutants, scavenging ruins, and bonding with Hemorrhage over destroying billboards from the before 4 times. When Hemorrhage touches an image of a child and says, "I think I was a child before the boom booms," Summer's response is, "Wanna piss on it? Romantic, very Love Island meets The Road." Meanwhile, Rick's scheming to steal the isotope rock while Morty fights in the Blood Dome with a transplanted muscular arm called Armathy. But Summer's subplot is where the real darkness lives. She's using violence as emotional regulation. Every person she kills is another feeling she doesn't have to process. Every day in the Wasteland is another day she doesn't have to think about her parents splitting up. This is avoidance behavior speedrun, any percent. Rick deliberately keeps them there for 3 weeks. He uses the isotope to give the Death Stalkers electricity and modern amenities, turning their violent wasteland into suburbs. Summer marries Hemorrhage. They get a house. There's a neighbor named Eli who mows his lawn and has a pregnant girlfriend. Summer's commuting to scavenging jobs and coming home to a husband who watches Blood Dome playoffs on TV. She went from, "I don't care if I die," to, "Why hasn't my husband murdered anyone today?" in 3 weeks. Character arc complete. The marriage falls apart immediately, because that's what happens when you build a relationship on mutual nihilism, and then add routine. Summer's screaming, "I was a monster when you met me. We were monsters. We didn't care about anything." Hemorrhage fires back, "I still don't." Summer responds, "Yeah, except I'm the only one in this entire world that's still committed to that." She's literally arguing that she's better at not caring than her cannibal husband. That's the opposite of character growth. Rick engineered the whole thing. He gave them modern comforts, knowing it would destroy their relationship, because no union built on running from your problems lasts more than 5 years, 7 tops. He deliberately let Summer marry someone, knowing it would fail, just to prove the point that escapism doesn't work. That's either genius, tough love parenting, or psychological warfare disguised as a life lesson. Probably both. When Summer finally admits defeat and asks to go home, Rick's already packed. They portal back to Earth. Summer immediately goes to visit Jerry at his motel and gives him a skull from the first mutant she killed. Her speech is actually kind of profound. This is a reminder not to look back. Then she adds, "Everything's bullsh times T. Am I right?" Because emotional vulnerability makes her uncomfortable. Baby steps. What makes this episode perfect for understanding Summer is watching her choose violence over therapy. She doesn't talk about the divorce. She kills people about it. She doesn't process her feelings. She marries a warlord to avoid them. When that stops working, she doesn't double down. She recognizes it and goes home. That's growth, even if the path there involved multiple homicides and a failed marriage to a guy who eats people. Now Summer gets 4/10 because she's proven she's capable of genuine harm when she's scared, hurting, or given access to easy answers during chaos. She attempted to murder her own parents via balloon sacrifice after joining a doomsday cult for less than 24 hours. She went full Wasteland warrior and killed multiple people as therapy for her parents' divorce. She bought into gender supremacy ideology in about 5 minutes because it validated her ego. These aren't theoretical capabilities. This is actual damage she caused to real people, even if most of them were post-apocalyptic cannibals. What this rating means is Summer's evil comes from teenage vulnerability, amplified by sci-fi technology and zero supervision. Give her a crisis, some charismatic authority figure, and a framework that makes her feel important, and she'll tie people to balloons without questioning the ethics. Give her access to a violent wasteland and unprocessed divorce trauma, and she'll use murder as emotional regulation. Her capacity for harm is real and repeatable. ISS, she's got a pattern of choosing extremism over healthy coping when things get hard. But here's why she stays at 4/10 instead of climbing higher. She consistently recognizes when she's gone too far and course corrects. When the interdimensional party spirals into chaos, she doesn't run, she stays and cleans up the mess. When Gazorpazorp's gender supremacy gets her almost executed, she uses the same critical thinking that got her in trouble to escape. When the Wasteland marriage built on nihilism falls apart, she doesn't double down. She admits defeat and goes home. Every time Summer goes dark, something pulls her back. Usually, it's self-awareness, kicking in before permanent damage gets done. The 4/10 captures that Summer's dangerous but reachable. She does evil when she's vulnerable, and someone offers her simple solutions to complex emotions. Cult leaders, supremacist societies, and post-apocalyptic warlords all figured out the same thing. Summer will embrace harmful ideology if it helps her avoid processing her feelings. That's concerning. That's why she's not 2 to 3 divided by 10. What keeps her from being 5 to 6 divided by 10 is the self-awareness. She learns from mistakes, even when the lessons come from murdering people or almost sacrificing her parents. She's capable of recognizing this is unhealthy and walking away, which separates her from Beth's narcissistic avoidance and Rick's weaponized nihilism. Summer might actually break the family cycle of dysfunction because she's the only one who admits when she's part of the problem. Now let's try to find how evil Beth is and subscribe to our channel if you're enjoying our video so far. Beth is a horse surgeon who thinks she should have been Rick. Brilliant, adventurous, the chosen one who got to explore infinite universes instead of diagnosing equine depression in suburban Washington. Instead, she's married to Jerry, lives in a house with a 2-car garage, and spends her days elbow-deep in horse intestines, wondering what her life could have been. That resentment poisons everything she touches. What makes Beth dangerous is she inherited all of Rick's narcissism and sociopathic tendencies, but wrapped them in desperate need for his approval. Rick doesn't care what anyone thinks and will abandon people without guilt. Beth cares desperately what Rick thinks and will abandon people while feeling guilty about it, which somehow makes it worse. She's got her father's capacity for casual cruelty and her mother's abandonment issues, creating this toxic cocktail of I'm special and nobody understands me meets please love me, Dad. The question with Beth is whether she's a victim of Rick's terrible parenting or a villain who uses childhood trauma as an excuse for adult sociopathy. The answer is probably both, which doesn't make her less dangerous, it just makes her more complicated. Beth's the kind of person who'll trap a child in an alternate dimension out of jealousy, refuse to apologize 30 years later, then have an affair with herself while threatening her kids with alien weapons. Beth discovers her childhood best friend has been trapped in her imaginary world for 30 years, surviving through cannibalistic incest. And her response is basically, yeah, I did that, and then she kills him, clones him to avoid consequences, and seriously considers abandoning her family via Rick-made replacement. This is sociopathy with a veterinary degree. The ABCs of Beth opens with news coverage of Joseph Lipnip being executed for eating his son Thomas. Beth remembers Tommy was her childhood best friend who disappeared, and she coped by imagining he got lost in Fruppyland, her make-believe world. Rick overhears and gets offended because Fruppyland wasn't imaginary. He actually built it. Beth realizes this means Tommy might actually be trapped there. They portal in to investigate. Fruppyland is a child-safe dimension with bouncy ground and breathable water. Rick gets attacked by a giant bird and loses an arm. When his robotic replacement analyzes the bird's DNA, it's mixed with human. Beth immediately connects the dots. Are you saying Tommy survived here by having sex with Fruppy creatures, creating Fruppy human hybrid offspring, and then consuming their proteins, sustaining himself with an endless cycle of cannibalistic incest? Rick adds that Tommy's probably worshipped as a god by a medieval-level society of his least delicious children. They get captured by an army of Fruppy human hybrids and taken to King Tommy. Rick's theory was 100% accurate. Tommy puts on a play revealing the truth. Beth trapped him there as a child. Tommy's dad took him places and spent time with him. Beth got jealous because Rick never did that for her, so she pushed Tommy into Fruppyland and left him there. For 30 years, Tommy survived by reproducing with Fruppy creatures, then eating the tastier offspring while keeping the less appetizing ones as subjects. When confronted, Beth refuses to apologize. She tries to blame Rick instead, saying she only did it for his attention. Rick drops the truth. You were a scary fucking kid. He reveals Beth constantly asked him to make psychotic inventions, invisibility handcuffs, parent leg traps, poison gum, mind control hair clips, a pink sentient switchblade. This wasn't Rick corrupting an innocent child. This was a child with sociopathic tendencies, asking her genius father to enable them. When Beth still won't apologize, Tommy attacks. He sicks his incest cannibal children on her. Beth goes into a defensive killing frenzy and massacres them, returning with Tommy's severed finger. She presumably killed him. So Beth trapped a kid for 30 years, refused to apologize when confronted, then killed him when he retaliated. Zero accountability, maximum violence. Rick and Beth clone an adult Tommy to prevent his father's execution for cannibalism. They just casually fix the legal system with cloning, rather than dealing with consequences. Then Rick offers Beth a choice. leave the family to travel the cosmos, while Rick replaces her with a clone, or stay, and be content. He's offering the ultimate escape hatch. Abandon your family without guilt, because they'll never know you're gone. Beth's decision is left deliberately ambiguous. Either she stayed and is trying harder, or she left, and her replacement is doing a better job. Both options suggest the only way Beth can be a good mother is through superhuman effort or literal replacement. Beth's childhood cruelty in Fruppyland showed the roots of her narcissism, but her future affair with herself proves that self-obsession doesn't fade. It evolves. Beth has an affair with herself, lies to her family for weeks, and threatens her children with alien weapons when confronted. Peak narcissism is when the only person you're attracted to is literally yourself. Bethic Twinstinct opens on Thanksgiving with Jerry giving the world's most uncomfortable toast about how he'd literally kill himself if Beth left him or cheated. I know how I'd do it. Our first blender has an extra long cord. Man's planning his suicide method at the dinner table. Space Beth's visiting for the holiday weekend, and Jerry's spiral planning in front of the turkey. That night, Beth and Space Beth can't sleep because they share the same bad back. They start giving each other massages. You act like this badass space cowboy, but I know you're just a scared little overachiever. There's tension. They both go, better get back to bed, but something shifted. They start making excuses to leave together. We're gonna make a run to the Gloppy Drop system for ice cream. They portal to Space Beth's personal space station, where she already has ice cream in the fridge. They just needed an excuse to be alone. They make a deal. Let's trust ourselves enough to stop wondering who we are when we're together. Then they start complimenting each other. I'm a good-looking woman. I also find myself quite attractive. This is narcissism, achieving sentience. They forget the ice cream multiple times. Rick warns Beth about keeping secrets, but she ignores him because she's too busy making out with herself in the holodeck. Summer and Morty discover their moms created an entire virtual lifetime together, a full San Junipero scenario. The kids confront them. Space Beth gets aggressive. Fuck off. She'll tell her husband what she wants when she feels like it, and you can deal with it, or you can deal with me. But you should know I have all the predator weapons. She's threatening her own children with alien weaponry to defend her affair with herself. Both Beths tell Jerry at dinner, I had sex with your wife, or I'm your wife and had sex with the clone you sleep with. We had sex. We loved it. Zero tact. Jerry immediately activates his pillbug protocol and rolls into an indestructible ball rather than process his feelings. Very Kafka meets sitcom dysfunction. Both Beths argue about who's responsible. Neither can admit fault, because they're both too self-obsessed to see they're identical in all the worst ways. Jerry eventually unrolls and reveals he's mad because he wasn't included, not because of the affair itself. This leads to Jerry permitting their relationship in this weird power dynamic where they're making out at the table while the kids are traumatized. Discovery Channel! Discovery Channel! Why? Morty's screaming while trying to eat turkey. What makes these episodes perfect for understanding Beth is watching narcissism operate at different scales. Child Beth trapped Tommy for 30 years out of jealous rage, then refused to apologize as an adult, then killed him when confronted. Adult Beth is so self-obsessed the only person she's genuinely attracted to is herself, and when her family objects, she threatens them with weapons. Zero accountability, maximum self-interest, violence, or threats when challenged. That's the Beth pattern across decades. Beth's affair with herself showed the peak of her narcissism, and her next choice would prove just how far she'll go to prioritize her father over her own family. Rick escapes space prison by collapsing the Galactic Federation's economy, then forces Beth to choose between him and Jerry. Beth picks her dad without hesitation, kicking Jerry out and prioritizing her childhood abandonment issues over her children's stable home. This is Weaponized Daddy Issues meets Suburban Midlife Crisis. The Rickshank Rickdemption opens with Rick trapped in a brainalyzer, where the Federation is trying to extract his portal gun formula. While Rick's running a con in his own brain, Beth and Jerry are at couples therapy on Nuptia 4. Back home, Summer's convinced Rick turned himself in as part of a plan. Morty thinks she's delusional. The episode cuts between Rick's prison break and the family falling apart without him. Rick escapes by uploading a virus, transferring his consciousness through multiple bodies, teleporting the Citadel of Ricks into Federation prison, and ultimately destroying the Federation's currency. He crashes the entire galactic economy by changing a 1 to a 0. When the Blemflark's value drops to nothing, the Federation president shoots himself, and everyone starts rioting over pants. Rick collapses an interstellar government to get McNugget sauce. That's the proportional response he considers reasonable. Beth and Jerry return from couples therapy to find civilization collapsed. Jerry's crawling through chaos. Beth asks, "Are we ever going to stop paying for indulging your father?" Rick shows up. "Guess who dismantled the government?" Jerry finally has enough. Foot down time. "Beth, it's him or me." There's a pause. Rick says, "Seems like you guys need some privacy," and leaves for the garage. Beth follows him. Jerry's going to spend some time divorced. That's it. No discussion with the kids. No consideration for how this affects Summer and Morty. Beth chooses Rick over her children's stable home because she's been waiting her whole life for her father to come back and choose her. When he does, she'll sacrifice anything, her marriage, her kids' well-being, basic family stability, for that validation. Rick explicitly tells Morty he replaced Jerry as the de facto patriarch, and that Beth only accepted him back because he brought the kids. Beth doesn't care that Rick's manipulating the family. She cares that Daddy's home. Beth's not a victim here. She's a 40-year-old woman choosing her absentee father over her teenage children because she never processed being abandoned. She's weaponizing her intelligence to justify selfish choices. Jerry's going to spend some time divorced. Sounds like therapy speak for, "I'm kicking out my husband for my dad." She frames it as Jerry's growth opportunity, when really it's her choosing the parent who abandoned her over the partner who stayed. That's perpetuating the cycle, with her own kids as collateral damage. Beth's choice between Rick and Jerry exposed how her unresolved daddy issues shape her loyalties, and her next move would reveal just how deep her family dysfunction runs when two versions of herself collide. Beth and Jerry go to alien couples therapy, where their perceptions of each other get manifested as biological creatures. Both manifestations are hideous monsters that want to kill each other. The therapist calls it the single worst marriage I've ever witnessed, and can't understand why they're together. Beth and Jerry agree to stay married anyway because breaking up would mean admitting failure. Big Trouble in Little Sanchez sends Beth and Jerry to Nuptia 4, a couples counseling institute with a 100% success rate. The therapist uses technology to manifest how each partner perceives the other. When they scan Jerry's brain, his perception of Beth emerges as a grotesque, judgmental monster. Jerry's horrified. "You do not think that about me." The therapist explains these are unconscious, unhealthy thoughts. Then they scan Beth. Beth's perception of Jerry as a pathetic, worm-like creature. She immediately gloats. "Read it and weep, bitch." She's validated that the technology confirms her contempt. The therapist shows them other couples' manifestations fighting each other and explains, "We are not the monsters we sometimes see each other as. Except Beth and Jerry's monsters are different. They're codependent. The manifestations escape containment and team up. They're supposed to fight each other, but instead they cooperate to create an army of Jerrys to dominate the universe." The therapist is horrified. "You have the single worst marriage I've ever witnessed. It shouldn't exist. You should never, ever, ever have gotten together, and I do not understand how or why you would ever stay together." He's literally running away from them, screaming about how dysfunctional they are. Beth and Jerry end up working together to survive the manifestations. Jerry sees how Beth views him and says, "How can Beth have these thoughts about me? That judgmental monster bitch." Beth's manifestation wants to use Jerry's subservience to dominate the universe because the value of his subservience is wasted on you. Even Beth's subconscious knows she's wasting her life with someone she despises. At the end, they agree to stay together, at least until Morty has graduated high school, because they're comfortable being miserable together. The therapist literally ran away, screaming, and they took that as confirmation they should stay married. Beth would rather torture herself and Jerry with a poisonous marriage than admit she made a mistake or be alone. That's evil through weaponized commitment, end quote, making everyone around her miserable because she won't make the hard choice to leave. What makes this Beth's defining evil is the casual cruelty of staying. She knows she sees Jerry as a pathetic worm. She knows he sees her as a monster. A couples therapist with alien technology literally told them their marriage shouldn't exist. And Beth's response is, "Let's keep doing this for several more years because our son hasn't graduated yet." That's using the kids as an excuse to avoid dealing with her own life. She'd rather maintain the status quo and be miserable than risk change. And she'll make Jerry, Summer, and Morty live in that toxic environment because facing her mistakes is harder than inflicting daily emotional violence on her family. Beth's refusal to end a toxic marriage showed her talent for maintaining dysfunction, but when two versions of herself collide, that same dysfunction turns into a weapon against Rick himself. Space Beth returns with a bomb in her neck. Rick reveals he doesn't know which Beth is the clone because he erased his own memory, and both Beths team up to fight the Federation while insulting each other the entire time. Then they both decide they don't care which one's real because hating Rick is more satisfying than needing his validation. Character growth speedrun. Star Mort. Rick turn of the Jerry opens with Space Beth, discovering Rick put a bomb in her neck. She returns to Earth to murder him. Rick scans her and reveals the bomb would have vaporized her after downloading her memories. His plan was for one Beth to kill the other. Space. Beth's pissed. Rick's defensive. Then the news reports the Galactic Federation will blow up Earth unless some woman with a very boring name turns herself in. They're looking for Beth Smith, leader of the Defiance Rebellion. Rick realizes they'll track down Domestic Beth. Rick goes to rescue both Beths from the Federation. On the way, he reveals to the kids, "I made a clone of you to send into space, and I put a bomb in her neck in case she ever came back." When asked why she came back, he explains, "She found a bomb in her neck. Wouldn't you?" The kids are horrified. Jerry says, "Father of the Year twice." Rick's just mad his plan didn't work. Both Beths get captured. While imprisoned, they argue about which one's the clone. Domestic Beth. Just something about the eyes. The shameless abandonment of your family. Space Beth fires back that Domestic Beth made a conscious choice to swallow your dreams with cheap wine and dinosaur pasta. Domestic Beth responds, "You cosplay as your shitty father in his 30 seconds." They're trading barbs about who's more pathetic, the one who stayed or the one who left. Both insults land because both are true. Rick shows up to rescue them, saying, "If one of you is still alive, you're my real daughter. If you're both alive, don't hurt the other one. She's just a clone." Both Beths react identically. That piece of shit. They team up to fight their way out. Space Beth, "You kill good bugs for a horse doctor." Domestic Beth, "Thanks me." They're bonding over murdering aliens and hating Rick. Very healthy family dynamics. When they escape, Rick reveals he has a vial containing the memory of which Beth is real and which is the clone. He mind blew himself so he wouldn't know. Both Beths reject it. "I don't care what's in that vial." "Yeah, me neither. You're a piece of poop either way." The kids agree. They're happy having two badass moms. Summer tells Rick, "Don't drag us into your BS just because you're losing control." Beth makes Rick choose. "For once in my life, I want you to decide, Dad. Do you want me to stay here and be part of your life, or do you want me to leave?" She's putting the choice entirely on him rather than making her own decision. That's still seeking Rick's approval, just in a different form. Rick ultimately chooses both. He doesn't reveal which is the clone, and both Beths stay in their respective lives. What this episode reveals about Beth is her capacity for violence when protecting her family. When the Federation attacks, both Beths become lethal. Domestic Beth fights just as effectively as Space Beth. She's Rick's daughter, and she knows how to kill. The protectiveness exists. It's buried under layers of narcissism and resentment. But when her kids face real danger, Beth becomes genuinely dangerous herself. But the episode also shows Beth still needs Rick's validation. Instead of deciding for herself whether to stay or leave, she makes Rick choose. She frames it as him finally taking responsibility, but really it's her refusing to own her decision. Whether she stays with her family or leaves for space adventures, she wants Rick to tell her it's okay. That's the tragedy. Even when she's being a badass, even when she's rejecting his manipulation, she's still that kid, asking her dad to notice her. Now Beth gets 7/10 because she inherited all of Rick's worst traits: narcissism, sociopathy, casual cruelty, two-way tea, without the genius to justify them or the portal gun to escape consequences. She trapped a child in an alternate dimension for 30 years out of jealous rage, refused to apologize when confronted, then killed him in a defensive frenzy. She had an affair with herself because she's literally only attracted to her own reflection. She chose her absentee father over her children's stable home because validating daddy's return mattered more than their well-being. She stays married to someone she views as a pathetic worm because admitting failure is harder than inflicting daily emotional violence on everyone around her. The 7/10 reflects that Beth's evil operates primarily through selfishness and emotional abuse rather than direct violence. She's just poisoning everything she touches through resentment, narcissism, and refusal to take accountability. She's Rick without the portal gun, TS, trapped in suburban mediocrity, bitter about her wasted potential, and taking it out on everyone close to her. She uses her intelligence to justify selfish choices, weaponizing therapy speak and self-awareness as permission to keep hurting people. What keeps Beth from being 8 to 9 divided by 10 is her genuine capacity for protecting her kids when they face real threats. When the Federation attacks, both versions of Beth become lethal and effective. The love exists. It's just buried under so many layers of dysfunction that it only surfaces during life or death situations. She'll sacrifice her kids' emotional well-being for Rick's approval, but she won't let aliens kill them. That's just the bare minimum of not being a complete monster. Beth's the family's clearest example of generational trauma in action. Rick abandoned her, so she became him. Narcissistic, cruel, unable to admit fault. But she also stayed with her kids instead of leaving like he did, trapping herself in the life she resents. She's simultaneously victim and perpetrator, damaged by her father and damaging her children. She's a bad person trying occasionally to be a good mom, which is tragic, but doesn't excuse the decades of emotional abuse she inflicts on her family. The show's answer to whether she's the clone doesn't matter because both versions made the same choice. Stay close enough to Rick to seek his validation while far enough to blame him for their problems. That's the Beth pattern, and it's 7/10 evil. And remember to subscribe to our channel. Jerry is unemployed, insecure, pathetic, the family punching bag everyone treats like garbage. And honestly, he kind of deserves it. But Jerry's weakness hides something darker, weaponized victimhood. He uses his patheticness as both shield and sword, manipulating sympathy while avoiding accountability for anything. What makes Jerry dangerous isn't strength or intelligence. It's that his incompetence is so profound it becomes a superpower. He can't be blamed for disasters because everyone already expects him to fail. He can't be held responsible because he's just Jerry. His weakness is so complete it loops back around to being unfalsifiable. Any criticism just proves how victimized he is. Any consequence just confirms how unfair the world treats him. The question with Jerry is whether his harmlessness is real or just effective camouflage. Is he genuinely too pathetic to cause real damage? Or does his patheticness create a blind spot where actual harm gets excused? When someone's defining trait is, can't do anything right, do their choices still count as evil? Or are they just inevitable outcomes of being Jerry? Jerry's the kind of person who will ruin your life through sheer incompetence, then cry about how hard it was for him. That's something more insidious. Jerry gets dropped at an interdimensional daycare for Jerrys and discovers his people, other equally pathetic Jerrys who validate his existence by being exactly as useless as he is. Then he tries to escape, faces the scary alien world, and immediately runs back to where people pretend he matters. This is Jerry distilled to pure essence. Morty Night Run opens with Morty learning to drive Rick's ship while Jerry's inexplicably in the backseat. Rick's startled when he notices, "Whoa, Jesus, Jerry, what the hell are you doing here?" Apparently Rick agreed Jerry could come along, but then completely forgot about his existence mid-flight. That's the Jerry experience. Being so forgettable your own family doesn't register your presence. Rick refuses to waste time taking Jerry home, so he drops him at Jerry Baree, Marca Daycare, specifically designed for Jerrys from different dimensions. The receptionist pinches Jerry's cheek like he's a toddler. "Aren't you handsome?" Jerry's flattered instead of insulted, because any attention is good attention when you're Jerry. When the doors open, revealing a room full of other Jerrys, multiple Jerrys scream, "I don't know how this works," and "Help me. Welcome to Jerry Storage." Rick hands Morty a ticket. "That number's your dad. If you lose it, we're not going to be able to get him back." He's literally treating Jerry like a coat check. The receptionist asks Rick to mark the reason for drop-off. Rick checks, "Stowaway," and "Annoying me." Jerry's being stored like luggage that talks too much. Initially, Jerry protests. He approaches the daycare worker, insisting he's an adult who wants to leave. She cheerfully directs him to an exit tube. Jerry crawls through muttering, "I know how to crawl in a tube," until it becomes a slide dumping him into a ball pit with other Jerrys playing Marco Polo. A person in a Beth costume shows up. "Jerry, I love you, Jerry." Jerry's indignant until fake Beth offers to watch Midnight Run with director's commentary. Multiple Jerrys get excited. The factory tint setting is always too high. Jerry immediately forgets his dignity and races the other Jerrys to adjust the picture settings. That's the turning point. Jerry stops resisting and embraces Jerry Baree because it's designed for his exact specifications. Other Jerrys forward each other joke emails. "Duck, duck, birdie." Very funny. They're entertained by the same dumb humor. They validate each other's existence by confirming they're all equally mediocre. Jerry's having the time of his life being average in a room of people who make average look accomplished. Then another Jerry reveals the truth. Some Jerrys in a back room are the Jerrys whose Ricks and Mortys never came back. They live here now. Forgotten Jerrys standing around, looking despondent because their families abandoned them permanently. Jerry has a moment of horror, realizing this could be his fate. He decides to escape. Jerry marches out, declaring, "I'm leaving." The receptionist responds, "Okay then, that was always allowed." He was never trapped. He could have left any time. But Jerry needed to make it a dramatic choice, rather than just walking out normally, because everything's more important when he's the victim of circumstances. Jerry ventures into the alien world of the cross-temporal asteroid. He tries to buy transport to Earth but can't understand the alien customs agent. He tries to pet a creature that looks like a dog, but its face explodes into tentacles. A homeless alien begs him for money, then literally explodes into blue goo that gets all over Jerry. Two smaller aliens rush up with cups trying to get some of the goo. Jerry runs away screaming. He stumbles onto aliens, having sex in an alley. He sits alone on a bench under a streetlight, terrified and flinching at every noise. Jerry walks back into Jerrybury, hanging his head in defeat. The receptionist smiles cheerfully. Jerry finds the same Jerrys from before, trying to set up a TV. "Hey, are you the one that left?" Jerry nods. "I get it. It's a hassle out there." Jerry immediately relaxes. "Right? Who needs that?" The other Jerrys agree. The outside world is too much work. Jerry meets Paul Fleischman, a Jerry whose Beth remarried him in a different timeline. Paul's weirdly well-adjusted about it. Every kid needs a dad, but there's no replacing you. They bond over trying to figure out TV audio settings. The camera pans out showing multiple clusters of Jerrys, all working on identical TV setups, all struggling with the exact same problem. There's two different colors. That's Jerry's existence. Infinite versions of himself, all equally confused by basic technology, all finding comfort in shared mediocrity. When Rick and Morty return to pick him up, Jerry hugs Morty. "I missed you." Did he though? He was having a great time with the other Jerrys. He missed his family the same way someone misses responsibilities they're avoiding. Another Rick approaches, holding a different ticket number. The Ricks exchange Jerrys. Both Jerrys look nervous. Wait, what?" The Ricks don't care. "Alright, come on Jerry." They literally picked up the wrong Jerry, and nobody notices because all Jerrys are functionally interchangeable. What makes this episode perfect for understanding Jerry is watching him discover his actual happy place. A daycare, designed to make Jerrys feel special for being aggressively average. Jerry doesn't want to be better. He wants to be validated for being exactly as mediocre as he is. When confronted with the actual universe, where he'd need to function independently, he runs back to the safe space, where other Jerrys confirm his victimhood is reasonable. He's evil through weaponized incompetence. The outside world is too much hassle. So he'll just stay where people lower their expectations to Jerry level and call that success. The wrong Jerry getting picked up is the perfect ending because it doesn't matter. Jerry's so replaceable that his own family doesn't notice when it's not him. And honestly, the replacement Jerry will probably do just as well, which is to say not well at all, but in exactly the same way as the original. That's Jerry's superpower, mycation, being so consistently mediocre that even infinity can't produce a meaningful variation. Jerry's cozy surrender at Jerrybury showed how he thrives on mediocrity, but when he finally gains power, his true nature surfaces fast, and it's anything but harmless. Rick and Jerry swap minds to prove who's smarter, accidentally merge into Jarek, and immediately abandon the family to become criminals. The instant Jerry gets Rick's abilities, his niceness evaporates, proving it was just weaponized submission waiting for an upgrade. The Jarek trap starts with Jerry complaining about Gene borrowing his rake. Rick's offended Jerry thinks he wastes his brain, so they swap minds. Both panic in each other's bodies. The garage AI detects the emergency and shuffles them again, creating Jarek, a 50/50 fusion with Rick's abilities and Jerry's personality. Jarek loves himself. He's got Rick's skills without the self-loathing. When Morty gets kidnapped, Jarek teams up with the other Rick-Jerry hybrid to rescue him, becoming confident criminals who steal crystals and build giant burgers. They're having the time of their lives being competent. This is Jerry's ideal self, capable, respected, dangerous, not Jerry. Beth notices they're stalling on separating. Both hybrids admit they don't want to go back. They leave a note and run away permanently. The crime boss captures the family as bait. Jarek shows up fully merged, 4 arms, all Rick's tech, and defeats everyone easily. Then announces he's leaving forever. "Your dad and grandpa are dead. I am Jarek, and I only need to love myself." Summer tackles him. They force separation. Rick and Jerry return to normal, immediately hating each other. Great, so I still wind up stuck with Jerry's dumbass? What this reveals. Jerry with power becomes a selfish criminal who abandons his family instantly. His niceness isn't virtue, it's the best option available to someone with no other options. The post-credits shows Memory Rick, trapped in Jerry's brain, trying to escape a consciousness that remembers all technology, as powered by springs and gears. Jerry's criminal turn as Jarek exposed the selfish core beneath his meekness, and his simulated success proves he'll believe any lie as long as it flatters his ego. Jerry gets trapped in an alien simulation and doesn't notice obvious glitches because he's too busy accepting fake validation. His weakness isn't insecurity, it's delusional narcissism, convinced the world is wrong for not recognizing his genius. M. Night Shyam Aliens traps Rick and Morty in a simulation run by aliens trying to steal Rick's tech. Jerry's accidentally there too, set to 5% processing power because the aliens don't care about him. While Rick fights aliens, Jerry's having the best day of his life. Jerry pitches Hungry for Apples, a blatant "got milk?" ripoff. The NPCs stare blankly, then all say, yes. Jerry's ecstatic. He walks outside while the same 3 NPCs loop past him saying, "Looking good, slow down, my man." Jerry doesn't notice they're repeating because he's too excited about his success. Jerry spirals between admitting he's a fraud and insisting he deserves promotion. His boss only responds by snapping and saying yes to everything. Jerry asks if there's an award called the Appley for Apple campaigns. Boss, yes. Can they nominate him? Yes. Jerry runs out screaming, "Holy crap," completely missing that his boss is glitching. At the Appley Awards, Jerry declares, "I am finally complete." The simulation crashes. Everyone glitches into one mailman, repeating, my man." Jerry's award disappears. No! Rick drags him out through multiple nested simulations. Back on Earth, Jerry pitches for real. His boss fires him immediately. Well, then it was a terrible simulation. What this reveals: Jerry accepts obvious lies because they confirm he deserves success. NPCs loop. His boss only says one word, "Nothing's real." But Jerry wants validation more than truth. His insecurity is actually entitlement. He doesn't think he's worthless. He thinks the world is wrong for not recognizing his value. That's dangerous stupidity mistaking itself for unrecognized genius. Jerry's eagerness to believe flattering lies showed how deep his narcissism runs, and his galaxy penis stunt proves he'll chase validation, even when it turns lethal. Jerry eats Rick's mutant bacteria, ends up in an alien hospital, and gets told the galaxy's most important civil rights leader needs Jerry's penis as a heart transplant. Jerry immediately volunteers for martyrdom, makes it the most dramatic sacrifice possible, then gets devastated when they don't need his penis anymore. He's so desperate for validation, he tries forcing them to take it at gunpoint. That's performative victimhood, achieving terminal velocity. Interdimensional Cable 2 starts with Jerry accidentally eating mutant bacteria Rick stored in the freezer. At the alien hospital, doctors reveal Shrimply Pibbles, not to the galaxy's most influential civil rights leader, needs a heart transplant. Jerry's penis is the perfect match. Jerry doesn't hesitate. Yes, I will. That's right, assholes. Take my penis. Take it all. And tell Shrimply Pibbles that when the galaxy came calling, Jerry Smith from Earth didn't flinch. Man agreed to penis amputation in under 5 seconds because he saw an opportunity to be a hero. Beth initially refuses. Then she looks at the prosthetic catalog and starts reconsidering. Jerry tries making it her decision, but Beth won't take the bait. If you want to keep your penis, you should say, out loud, "I prefer to keep my penis." Jerry responds louder. But Beth, what kind of man would say something like that if the universe needed his penis? He's performing for the crowd. He wants everyone to see how noble he's being. At the press conference, Jerry's introduced as the brave Earthman whose sacrifice is going to allow Shrimply Pibbles to live. Jerry basks in the applause, then tries getting out of it by revealing Shrimply Pibbles has a heroin addiction. The crowd turns on him immediately. This guy's trying to get out of giving away his penis. They start booing. Jerry panics because his heroic moment is collapsing into public humiliation. Then, the twist. Aliens across the galaxy donated money for a synthetic heart. They don't need Jerry's penis anymore. Jerry's response? Wait, that was an option the whole time? You guys suck. He's not relieved, he's pissed. He wanted to be the martyr. Being saved robs him of his heroic narrative. So Jerry does what any rational person would do. He grabs what he thinks is a gun, takes the operating room hostage, and demands they remove his penis anyway. I'm a good person, and I demand that you cut off my penis and put it in that man's chest. He's holding doctors at gunpoint, trying to force them to perform unnecessary genital amputation because he needs the validation more than he needs as Dick. The gun turns out to be a vibrator from the prosthetic catalog. Jerry pulls down his pants and charges at Shrimply Pibbles, screaming, "I'm a good person." Security shoots him 57 times. What makes this episode perfect is watching Jerry's desperation for heroism override basic self-preservation. He agreed to lose his penis instantly when it meant being seen as noble. When that opportunity disappeared, he tried forcing it to happen anyway. Jerry doesn't want to be good. He wants to be seen being good. The performance matters more than the act. When nobody's watching, or when his sacrifice becomes unnecessary, the whole moral framework collapses. Beth's final speech nails it. "You can't make people like you. You just have to wait for hating you to bore them." Jerry responds, "I shouldn't be motivated by other people's opinions of me," then immediately asks to go to the zoo with his family. Another performative gesture showing he learned nothing. The post-credits shows him getting beaten up by the Eyehole Man for eating Rick's cereal, proving he'll keep making the same mistakes, chasing validation. Jerry's victimhood is strategic theater. He'll volunteer for any sacrifice as long as there's an audience, then find ways to back out or make it someone else's fault when actual consequences arrive. But if backing out means losing the validation, he'll double down to absurd extremes, even holding people hostage with a vibrator to force them to amputate his genitals. That's narcissism, wearing a victim costume. Jerry gets 3/10 because he's got all the toxic traits of worse people: entitlement, manipulation, narcissism, casual cruelty.com, but his incompetence neuters everything. He becomes tyrannical the instant he gets Rick's abilities, Jarek, proving his niceness is just weakness in disguise. He falls for obvious scams because his narcissism makes him believe he deserves unearned success, simulation. He volunteers for heroic sacrifice, then tries backing out, and when that fails, holds people hostage with a vibrator, trying to force them to amputate his penis for validation. Shrimply Pibbles. Every dark impulse is there. He just lacks capacity to make any of it stick. The 3/10 reflects that Jerry's evil is all intention with zero execution. He wants power, but becomes a criminal who abandons his family the second he gets it. He wants respect, but can only find it in broken simulations programmed to validate him. He wants to be seen as heroic, but his performance is so transparent, everyone immediately sees through it. His manipulation strategies are playground-level obvious. His schemes backfire before they begin. His victimhood is weaponized, but the weapon is a pool noodle. What makes Jerry dangerous isn't direct harm. He's too pathetic for that. What makes him toxic is how his weakness becomes everyone else's problem. His incompetence creates disasters other people have to fix. His need for validation makes him vulnerable to any scam offering fake success. His performative victimhood manipulates sympathy while avoiding accountability. He's the human equivalent of an emotional black hole, constantly demanding attention and validation while contributing nothing, making everything about his feelings while claiming he doesn't care what people think. But here's why he stays at 3/10 instead of climbing higher. Jerry's evil requires other people's complicity. Take away Rick's tech, and he's just a guy. Take away the simulation, and he gets fired immediately. Take away the audience, and his martyrdom complex has nowhere to perform. He's a parasite that only functions when attached to someone more capable. Alone, Jerry's just a sad man who can't hold a job and gets his ass kicked by cereal mascots. Jerry's the family's proof that weakness and goodness aren't the same thing. He's compliant because he has no other options. The second those options appear, Jarek, fake success, hero worship, the mask drops instantly. But the universe keeps dunking on him before he can actually cause lasting damage, making him more pathetic than threatening. He's evil adjacent, a genuinely bad person who's too incompetent to actualize his worst impulses. The tragedy is, Jerry will never realize this. He'll keep thinking the world is unfair for not recognizing his value, keep falling for validation scams, keep performing victimhood while creating problems. But he'll also keep failing in ways that prevent serious harm, making him the least dangerous family member despite genuinely toxic intentions. That's 3 divided by 10. Enough evil to be a bad person, not enough competence to be a real threat. That's it for today. If you want more videos like these, subscribe to our channel.